And the bot wasn't trying to hit them. It wasn't trying
welcome. How are you?
It was just trying to, and it crushed them.
What's good in your neck of the woods, my friend? That's amazing. All right. Have we met? Okay, you from Australia? Okay, excellent. Um, cool. What's your name normally when you're in here? Let me see. Just one moment. Yeah, we can learn about aliens all fucking night, man, or all fucking day. Excellent. All right. Do you know about Bob Lazar? Bob Lazar, B-O-B Lazar. All right. Do you know who Joe Rogan is? Okay, well then that's all we need to know. Here's Bob Lazar's interview on Joe Rogan about aliens and about Area 51 is. Excellent. Okay, just one moment. Oh, excellent. I'm glad you're here. Shout out to our new friend. All right.
Two, one, boom. And we're live. First of all, cheers, gentlemen. Let's have a little toast. Relax. Bob, thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate it. I understand that you've told.
If at any point you have questions or you want to talk, just let me know. In the meantime, I'm just going to let it go. Pardon me? Roger that? Perfect. Excellent.
The story many times. You've been grilled many times. And it's very stressful.
I'm here. I just have to adjust two of my computers. I'm like 10 feet away if you need me.
For people who don't know the story, there is a documentary. Jeremy Corbell has a documentary out right now. It's called Bob Lazar, Area 51 and UFOs
and flying saucers.
Bob
Lazar, Area 51 and flying saucers.
Okay. I first heard your story decades ago. I told you last night when we went out to dinner. I've seen pretty much every interview you've ever given. I've followed the story incredibly closely. But for people who don't know the story, let's give them the bullet points. You used to work at Area 50, and Area 51. God, you went like, huh?
Well, we want to be accurate.
Okay.
Area S4.
S4. Okay.
It's about 15 miles south of Area 51.
Okay. You worked in how would you describe it?
I guess within the Area 51 compound, you can call that a subset of Area 51.
And you got that job. Before that, you were working.
Before that, I had worked at Los Alamos
Right.
National Labs in New Mexico.
And you were involved in what kind of work?
Nuclear weapon development, physics. I mean, they do everything there.
So how do they approach you to say, hey, Bob, why don't you come on out to the Nevada desert?
Well, the way this went down was, at that time, it was 1982, I had put a jet engine in my Honda, and Los Alamos put it on the front page of the paper. Said, Los Alamos man, physicist at the lab, built this 200-mile-an-hour Honda jet car that I drove to work every day. So I was known in Los Alamos, the guy with the weird car, and you could hear it from a mile away. Anyway, the day that came out on the front page of the paper was the day Edward Teller, the father of the hydrogen bomb, was giving a lecture down there at the lab. And we didn't have much going on that day in our group, and I asked if I could go down there. And I went down there early, and Ed Teller was outside, leaning on a brick wall and reading the front page of the paper. Now, this is a guy out of history, so I introduced myself. Hey, I'm the guy you're reading about there. And we talked for a while, and it was cool. Fast forward 2 years later, I moved out to Las Vegas and had, left Los Alamos and, went on to other to get back into the scientific community. I left to start other businesses and that sort of thing. So I sent resumes out, and one of them went out to Ed Teller and referenced.
Welcome.
Back then. You remember?
One more time. Can you repeat that? No.
Right. And gave me a reference. Somebody contacted me, and that's pretty much how it started.
So you get a phone call or a letter? Like, what do you get?
Well, I got what did I get? I got a letter initially, and went down for an interview probably a couple times, and it was down at EG&T Special Projects, which was at McCarran Airport at that time out in Las Vegas.
And did they give you any sort of job description of what you were applying for?
They said it was for, I can't remember exactly what they did. This was a long time ago, but I think it was advanced propulsion or something like that. Something relatively generic. And they said it's in a remote area. It's going to be days on, some days off. And, it was kind of not exactly a full-time job, but you might have to be out there for 2 weeks at a time and take 2 weeks off. So it was kind of the work schedule would be kind of broken up.
And did this seem attractive to you, or did it seem weird?
No, it really wasn't weird, because people that work at the test site, anybody that's familiar with the area up there, working at the nuclear test site or at the Tonopah test range north of there, that's typically how things go.
So you had known about it from the scientific community? Because the Area 51 at that time was
no, they didn't say anything about Area 51.
Okay, so they
just said it was in a remote location, and you just know it was up at the test site.
Right.
So, but there was no mention of Area 51 at that time.
So they've done hundreds of nuclear tests in Nevada. The whole area there's been just giant chunks of Nevada that people.
Yeah, there's a big piece of Nevada, and it's split up into different areas. There's a nuclear test site. There's Area 51. There's the Tonopah test range north of that. There's
Bob, one of these days somebody's going to want the fucking interview.
So the next time you fill a prescription, check SingleCare to make sure you're getting the best price. Take control of your prescription costs. Go to singlecare.com or download the free app today.
This is a commercial for Psychics, America's most trusted psychic network. So, if you're waiting for a sign, this is it. No, really, this is it. You won't see your soulmate's face in the clubhouse or your career path mapped out in your cappuccino phone. This really is it. We could add some dramatic sound effects if you like. So what you waiting for? Experience the joy of certainty at CaliforniaPsychics.com.
And welcome back to Coast to Coast. George Norrie with you. Anthony Sanchez back with us, author, researcher, ufologist. He has dedicated his career to uncovering the mysteries of extraterrestrial phenomena with a focus on mysterious locations such as Area 51 in Dulce, New Mexico. He regularly writes and speaks at global conferences as well. Anthony, welcome to the program. How have you been? Oh my God, George Norrie. We have talked to you about that. It's great to hear your voice. It's been a while. I know you were with Connie Willis about a year and a half ago, and did a great job for us. What's new with you? Well, I want to share with you a lot of people are not aware of the fact that in August 2019, I got what they call Guillain-Barré syndrome. And for 2 years, I was paralyzed from the neck down, and I couldn't speak.
I think, we were applying for $50, $100 blinds, and over the course of about 120,000 hands, it made close to $2 million.
120,000 hands.
120,000 hands.
It's just humans.
Yeah, and this was fake money, so there was real money at stake. It was $200,000.
First of all money is fake, but that's a different conversation.
Love it.
We give it meaning. It's a phenomenon that gets meaning from our complex psychology as a human civilization. It's emerging from the collective intelligence of the human species. But that's not what you mean. You mean like there's literally you can't buy stuff with it. Okay, can you actually step back and take me through that competition?
Yeah. Okay. So when I was in grad school, there was this thing called the annual computer poker competition, where every year all the different research labs working on AI for poker would get together. They would make a bot. They would play them against each other. And we made a bot that actually won the 2014 competition, the 2016 competition. And so we decided we're going to take this bot, build on it, and play against real top professional heads-up no limit Texas Hold'em poker players. So we invited 4 of the world's best players in this specialty, and we challenged them to 120,000 hands of poker over the course of 20 days. And we had $200,000 in prize money at stake, where it would basically be divided among them depending on how well they did relative to each other. So we wanted to have some incentive for them to play their best.
Did you have a confidence 2014 and 16 that this was even possible? How much doubt was there?
So, and we did a competition actually in 2015 where we also played against professional poker players, and the bot lost by a pretty sizable margin actually. Now, there were some big improvements from 2015 to 2017. And so,
can you speak to the improvements? Is it computational nature? Is it the algorithm, the methods?
It was really an algorithmic approach. That was the difference. So 2015, it was much more focused on trying to come up with a strategy up front, like trying to solve the entire game of poker, like, and then just have a lookup table where you're saying like, oh, I'm in this situation. What's the strategy? The approach that we took in 2017 was much more search-based. It was trying to say, okay, well, let me in real time try to compute a much better than what I had pre-computed by playing against myself to myself.
What is the search space for poker? What do you search over? What's that look like? There's different actions like raising, calling. Yeah, what are the actions? Is it just a search over actions?
So in a game like chess, the search is like, okay, I'm in this chess position, and I can like look these different pieces and see where things end up. In poker, what you're searching over is the actions that you can take for your hand, the probabilities that you take those actions, and then also the probabilities that you take other actions with other hands that you might have. And that's kind of like hard to wrap your head around. Like, why are you searching over these like other hands that you might have, and like trying to figure out what you would do with those hands? And the idea is again, you want to always be balanced and unpredictable. And so if your search algorithm is saying like, oh, I want to raise with this hand, well, in order to know whether that's a good action, like let's say it's a bluff. Let's say you have a bad hand and you're saying like, oh, I think I should be betting here with this really bad hand and bluffing. Well, that's only a good action if you're also betting with a strong hand. Otherwise, it's an obvious bluff.
So if your action, in some sense, maximizes your unpredictability, so that action could be mapped by your opponent to a lot of different hands, then that's a good action.
Basically, what you want to do is put your opponent into a tough spot. So you want them to always have some doubt, like, should I call here? Should I fold here? And if you are raising in the appropriate balance between bluff hands, then you're putting them into that tough spot. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're always trying to search for a strategy that would put the opponent into a difficult position.
Can you give a metric that you're trying to maximize or minimize? Does this have to do with the regret thing we're talking about in terms of putting your opponent in a maximally tough spot?
Yeah, ultimately what you're trying to maximize is your expected winnings, your expected value, the amount of money that you're going to walk away from, assuming that your opponent was playing optimally in response. So you're going to assume that your opponent is also playing like as well as possible a Nash equilibrium approach, because if they're not, then you're just going to make more money, right? Like anything that deviates, like by definition, the Nash equilibrium is the strategy that does the best in expectation. And so if you're deviating from that, then they're going to lose money. And since the two players are in game, that means you're going to make money. So
there's not an explicit like objective function that maximizes the toughness of the spot they're put in. You're always, this is from like a self-play reinforcement learning perspective, you're just trying to maximize winnings, and the rest is implicit.
That's right. Yeah. So we're actually trying to maximize is the expected value, given that the opponent is playing optimally in response to us. Now, in practice, what that ends up looking like is it's putting the opponent into difficult situations where there's no obvious decision to be made.
So the system doesn't know anything about the difficulty of the situation.
Not at all. Doesn't care.
Okay. All right. In my head, it was getting excited whenever I was making the opponent sweat. Okay, so your 2015 didn't do as well. So what's the journey from that to a system that, in your mind, could have a chance?
So 2015, we got beat pretty badly, and we actually learned a lot from that competition. In particular, what became clear to me is that the way the humans were approaching the game was very different from how the bot was approaching the game. The bot would not be doing search; it would just be trying to compute. It would do like months of self-play. It would just be playing against itself for months, but then when it's actually playing the game, it would just act instantly. And the humans, when they're in a tough spot, they would sit there and think for sometimes even like 5 minutes about whether they're going to call or fold a hand. And it became clear to me that there's a good chance that that's what's missing from the bot. So I actually did some initial experiments to try to figure out how much of a difference this is actually make, and the difference was huge.
As a signal to the human player, how long you think?
No. I'm not saying that there were any timing tells. I was saying when the human, like the bot, would always act instantly. It wouldn't try to come up with a better strategy in real time over what it had pre-computed during training. Whereas the human, like they have all this intuition about how to play, but they're also in real time leveraging their ability to think, to search, to plan, and coming up with an even better strategy than what their intuition would say.
So you're saying that that's what you mean by you're doing search also. You have a intuition and search on top of that, looking for a better solution.
Yeah, that's what I mean by search. Yeah. Instead of acting instantly, a neural net usually gives you a response in like 100 milliseconds or something. It depends on the size of the net. But if you can leverage extra computational resources, you can possibly get a much better outcome. And we did some experiments in small-scale versions of poker, and what we found was that if you do a little bit of search, even just a little bit, it was the equivalent of making your pre-computed strategy, like you can kind of think of it as your neural net, 1,000 times bigger. With just a little bit of search. And it just like blew away all of the research that we had been working on and trying to like scale up this like pre-computed solution. It was dwarfed by the benefit that we got from search.
Can you just linger on what you mean by search here? You're searching over a space of actions for your hand and for other hands. How are you selecting the other hands to search over?
So yeah,
randomly?
No, it's all the other hands that you put in. So when you're playing No Limit Texas Hold'em, you've got 2 face-down cards, and so that's 52 choose 2, 1,326 different combinations. Now that's actually a little bit lower because there's face-up cards in the middle, so you can eliminate those as well. But you're looking at like around 1,000 different possible hands that you can have. And so when the bot's doing search, it's thinking explicitly, there are these 1,000 different hands that I could have. There are these 1,000 different hands that you could have. Let me try to figure out what would be a better strategy than what I've pre-computed for these hands and your hands.
Okay, so that search, how do you fuse that with what the neural net is telling you, or what the trained system is telling you?
Yeah, so you kind of like where the trained system comes in is the value at the end. So there's you only look so far ahead. You look like maybe one round ahead. So if you're on the flop, you're looking to the start of the turn. And at that point, you can use the pre-computed solution to figure out what's the value here of this strategy.
Is it of a single action essentially in that spot? You're getting a value, or is it the value of the entire series of actions?
Well, it's kind of both, because you're trying to maximize the value for the hand that you have, but in the process, in order to maximize the value of the hand that you have to figure out what would I be doing with all these other hands as well.
Okay, but are you in the search always going to the end of the game?
In Libratus, we did. So we only used search starting on the turn, and then we searched all the way to the end of the game.
The turn, the river. Can we take it?
Yeah. There's 4 rounds of poker. So there's the pre-flop, the flop, turn, and the river. And so we would start doing search halfway through the game. Now, the first half of the game, that was all pre-computed. It would just act instantly. and then when we got to the halfway point, then it would always search to the end of the game. Now we later improved this, so it wouldn't have to search all the way to the end of the game. It would actually search just a few moves ahead. But that came later. That drastically reduced the amount of computational resources that we needed.
But the moves, because you can keep betting on top of each other. That's what you mean by moves. So like that's where you don't just get one bet per turn of poker. You can have multiple arbitrary number of bets, right?
Right. I'm trying to think like I'm gonna bet. What are you gonna do in response? Are you gonna raise me, or are you gonna call? And then if you raise, what should I do? So it's reasoning about that whole process up until the end of the game in the case of the Lebradas.
So for Lebradas, what's the most number of re-raises have you ever seen?
You probably cap out at like 5 or something, because at that point you're basically all in.
I mean, is there like interesting patterns like that you've seen that the game does? Like you'll have like Alpha Zero doing way more sacrifices than humans usually do. Is there something like Lebradas who's constantly re-racing or something like that you noticed?
There was something really interesting that we observed with Lebradas. So humans, when they're playing poker, they usually size their bets relative to the size of the pot. So if the pot has $100 in there, maybe you bet like $75 or somewhere around it, somewhere between like $50 and $100. And with Lebradas, we gave it the option to basically bet whatever it wanted. It was actually really easy for us to say like, oh, if you want, you can bet like 10 times the pot. And we didn't think it would actually do that. It was just like, why not give it the option? And then during the competition, it actually started doing this. And by the way, this is like a very last minute decision on our part to add this option. And so we did not think the bot would do this. And I was actually kind of worried when it did start to do this. Like, oh, is this a problem? Like humans don't do this. Is it screwing up? But it would put the humans into really difficult spots when you do that. Because, you can imagine, like, you have the second best hand that's possible given the board. And you're thinking, like, oh, you're in a really great spot here. And suddenly the bot bets $20,000 into a $1,000 pot. And it's basically saying, I have the best hand, or I'm bluffing. And you having the second best hand, like, now you get a really tough choice to make. And so the humans would sometimes think like 5 or 10 minutes about like, what do you do? Should I call? Should I fold? And when I saw the humans like really struggling with that decision, like that's when I realized like, oh, actually, this is maybe a good thing to do after all.
And of course, the system doesn't know that it's making, again, like we said, it's putting them in a tough spot. It's just that's part of the game theory out.
Right. From the bot's perspective, it's just doing a thing that's going to make it the most money. And the fact that it's putting the humans in a difficult spot, like that's just a side effect of that. And this was, I think, the one thing. I mean, there were things that the humans walked away from, but this was the number one thing that humans walked away from the competition, saying like, we need to start doing this. And now these overbets, what are called overbets, have become really common in high-level poker play.
Have you ever talked to like somebody like Daniel Negreanu about this? He seems to be a student of the game.
I did actually have a conversation with Daniel Negreanu once. Yeah, I was visiting the Isle of Man to talk to poker stars about AI, and Daniel Negreanu was there. We had dinner together with some other people, and yeah, he was really interested in it. He mentioned that he was like, excited about learning from these AIs.
So he wasn't scared. He was excited.
He was excited, and he honestly wanted to play against the bot. He thought he had a decent chance of beating it. I think this was like several years ago when I think it was like not as clear to everybody that the AIs were taking over. I think now people recognize that like if you're playing against a bot, there's like no chance that you have in a game like poker.
So consistently, the bots are good. The bots heads up, and in other variants, so multiple 6-player Texas Hold'em, no limit Texas Hold'em is the bots win.
Yeah, that's the case. So I think there's some debate about like, is it true for every single variant of poker? I think for every single variant of poker, if somebody really put in the effort, they can make an AI that would beat all humans at it. We've focused on the most popular variants, so heads up, no limit Texas Hold'em, and then we followed it up with 6-player poker as well, where we managed to make a bot that beat expert human players. And I think even there now, it's pretty clear that humans don't stand a chance.
See, I would love to hook up an AI system that looks at EEG, like how, like actually tries to optimize the toughness of the spot it puts a human in. And I would love to see how different is that from game theory outcome. So you try to maximize the heart rate of the human player, like the freaking out over a long period of time. I wonder if there's going to be different strategies that emerge that are close in terms of effectiveness. Because something tells me you could still be achieve superhuman level performance by just making people sweat.
I feel like that there's a good chance that is the case. Yeah, if you're able to see like that, it's like a decent proxy for score, right? And this is actually like the common poker wisdom. When they're teaching players before there were bots, and they were trying to teach people how to play poker. They could say like the key to the game is to put your opponent in difficult spots. It's a good estimate for if you're making the right decision.
So, what else can you say about the fundamental role of search in poker, and maybe if you can also relate it to chess and Go in these games? What's the role of search to solving these games?
Yeah, I think a lot of people this is true for the general public, and I think it's true for the AI community. A lot of people underestimate the importance of search for these kinds of game AI results. An example of this is TD Gammon. It came out in 1992. This was the first real instance of a neural net being used in a game AI. It's a landmark achievement. It was actually the inspiration for AlphaZero. And it used search. It used 2Pi search to figure out the next move. You got Deep Blue. There, it was very heavily focused on search, looking many moves ahead farther than any human could. And that was key for why it won. And then even with something like AlphaGo, I mean, AlphaGo is commonly hailed as a landmark performance, and it is. But there's also this huge component of search, Monte Carlo tree search for AlphaGo, that was key, absolutely essential for the AI to be top humans. I think a good example of this is you look at the latest versions of AlphaGo, like it's called AlphaZero, and there's this metric called human rating, where you can compare different humans, compare bots to humans. Now, a top human player is around 3,600 kilo, maybe a little bit higher. AlphaZero, the strongest version, is around 5,200 kilo. But if you take out search that's being done, this time, by the way, what I mean by search is
there he is.
planning ahead. The thinking of like, if I place this
Well,
here,
since you've been gone, we had two people here.
Like 5 years ahead, and you see like what the play state is like.
We're just chilling.
That's what I mean by search. If you take out the search, ego rating drops to around 3,000. So even today, 7 years after AlphaGo, if you take out Monte Carlo tree search that's being done at one place, odds are not superhuman.
I have a Roblox account.
That is superhuman.
It's worth lingering on. That's quite profound. So without search, that just means looking at the next move and say, this is the best move. So having a function that estimates accurately what the best move is.
That's right.
Without search.
Yeah, and all these bots, they have what's called a policy network, where it will tell you this is what the neural net thinks is the next best move. And it's kind of like the intuition that a human has. The human looks at the board, and any Go or chess master will be able to tell you, like, oh, instantly, here's what I think the right move is. And the bot is able to do the same thing. But just like how a human grandmaster can make a better decision if they have more time to think, when you add on this Monte Carlo tree search, the bot is able to make a better decision.
Yeah, I mean, of course, a human is doing something like search in their brain, but it's not. I hesitate to draw a hard line, but it's not like Monte Carlo tree search. It's more like sequential language model generation. So it's like the neural network is doing the searching. I wonder what the human brain is doing in terms of searching. Because you're doing that like computation. The human is computing. They have intuition, they have gut. They have a really strong ability to estimate, amongst the top players, of what is good and not position without calculating all the details. But they're still doing search in their head. But it's a different kind of search. Have you ever thought about like what is the difference between the search that the human is performing versus what computers are doing?
I have thought a lot about that, and I think it's a really important question. So the AI in AlphaGo or any of these Go AIs they're all doing Monte Carlo tree search, which is a particular kind of search, and it's actually a symbolic tabular search. It uses the neural net to guide its search, but it isn't actually like full on neural net. Now, that kind of search is very successful in these kinds of like perfect information for games like chess and Go. But if you take it to a game like poker, for example, it doesn't work. It can't understand the concept of hidden information. It doesn't understand the balance that you have to strike between like the amount that you're raising versus the amount that you're calling. And in every one of these games, you see a different kind of search. And the human brain is able to plan for all these different games in a very general way. Now, I think that's one thing that we're missing from AI today. I think it's a really important piece. The ability to plan and reason more generally across a wide variety of different settings.
In a way where general reasoning makes you better at each one of the games, not worse.
Yeah, so you can kind of think of it as like neural nets today. They'll give you, like Transformers, for example, they're super general. But they'll give you, it'll output an answer in like 100 milliseconds. And if you tell it like, well, you've got 5 minutes to give you a decision, feel free to take more time to make a better decision. It's not going to know what to do with that. But a human, if you're playing a game like chess, they're going to give you a very different answer depending on if you say, oh, you got 100 milliseconds or you got 5 minutes.
Yeah, people have started using Transformers and language models that the iterative way that doesn't prove the answer or like showing the work kind of idea.
Yeah, they got this thing called chain of thought reasoning, and that's I think
super promising.
Yeah, I think it's a good step in the right direction. I would kind of like say it's similar to Monte Carlo roulette in a game like chess. There's a kind of search that you could do where you're saying like I'm going to roll out my intuition and see like without really thinking, what are the better decisions I can make farther down the path? What would I do if I just acted according to intuition for the next 10 moves? And that gets you an improvement, but I think that there's much richer kind of planning that we could do.
So when Lebradas actually beat the poker players, what did that feel like? What was that? I mean, actually on that day, what were you feeling like? Were you nervous? I mean, poker was one of the games that he thought like is not going to be solvable because of the human factor. So, at least in the narratives we tell ourselves, the human factor is so fundamental to the game of poker.
Yeah, the Lebradas competition was super stressful. Also, I mean, I was working on this like basically continuously for a year leading up to the competition. I mean, for me, it was like very clear, like this is search technique, this is the approach that we need. And then I spent a year working on this pretty much like nonstop.
Oh, can we actually get into details like what programming language is it written in? What's some interesting implementation details that are like fun/painful?
Yeah, so one of the interesting things about Lebradas is that we had no idea what the bar was to actually beat top humans. We could play against like our fire bots, and that kind of gives us some sense of like, are we making progress? Are we going in the right direction? But we had no idea like what the bar actually was, and so we threw a huge amount of resources at trying to make the strongest bot possible. So we used C++. It was parallelized. We were using I think like 1,000 CPUs, maybe more actually. And today that sounds like nothing, but for a grad student back in 2016, that was a huge amount of resources.
Well, it's still a lot for even any grad student today. It's still tough to get, or even to allow yourself to think in that, in terms of scale at CMU and MIT, anything like that.
Yeah, and talking about terabytes of memory. So it was a very parallelized, and it had to be very fast too, because the more games that you could simulate, the stronger the bot would be.
So is there some like John Carmack style like efficiencies you have to come up with, like an efficient way to represent the hand, all that kind of stuff?
There are all sorts of optimizations that I had to make to try to get this thing to run as fast as possible. They were like, how do you minimize the latency? How do you like, package things together so that like you minimize the amount of communication between the different nodes? How do you like optimize the algorithms so that you can, try to squeeze out more and more from the game that you're actually playing? All these kinds of different decisions that I, had to make.
Just a fun question. What IDE did you use? What for C++ at the time?
I think I used Visual Studio actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that still carried through to today?
VS Code is what I use today. It seems like it's pretty
the community basically conversion of. Okay, cool. So you got this super optimized C++ system, and then you show up to the day of competition.
Yeah.
humans versus machine. How did it feel throughout the day?
Super stressful. I mean, I thought going into it that we had like a 50-50 chance. Basically, I thought if they play in a totally normal style, I think we'll squeak out a win. But there's always a chance that they can find some weakness in the bot. And if they do, we're playing like for 20 days, 120,000 hands of poker. They have a lot of time to find weaknesses in the system. And if they do, we're going to get crushed. And that's actually what happened in the previous competition. The humans, they started out, it wasn't like they were winning from the start, but then they found these weaknesses that they could take advantage of. And for the next like 10 days, they were just crushing the bot, stealing money from it.
What were the weaknesses they found? Like maybe overbetting was effective, that kind of stuff. So certain betting strategies work.
What they found is, overbetting, like betting certain amounts, I would have a lot of trouble dealing with those sizes. And then also, when the bot got into really difficult situations,
Drive, lady.
It wasn't able to,
Drive.
because it wasn't doing research, it
Drive.
to clump different
Go,
hands
baby.
together and it wouldn't treat them identically. So it wouldn't be able to distinguish, like having a high flush versus a side flush. And in some situations, that really matters a lot. And so they could put the bot into those situations, and then the bot would just be
Drive, lady.
Okay, so I
Drive, go. Pedal the metal.
Days. So
Lord.
What were the humans like over those 20 days? And what was the bot like?
Okay.
So we had set up the competition.
What happened?
Like I said, it was $200,000 prize money, and they would get paid a fraction of that.
How the fuck did that just happen?
Yeah. So I was kind of hoping that they could work together to try to find weaknesses in the bot, but they entered the competition with their number one objective being the bot, and they didn't care about individual play. They were like, we're all going to work as a team to try to take down this bot. And so they immediately started. What they would do is they would coordinate, looking at different parts of the strategy to try to find out weaknesses. And then at the end of the day, we actually sent them a log with all the hands that were played and cards the bot had in each of those hands.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that's gutsy.
Yeah, it was honestly, and I'm not sure why we did that in retrospect, but I mean, I'm glad we did it because we had like anyway. But that, if you've ever played poker, like that is golden information. You need to know. Usually, when you play poker, you see about a third of the hands to showdown, and to just hand them all the cards that the bot had on every single hand, that was just a gold mine for them. Yeah. And so then they would review the hands and try to see, like, okay, could they find patterns in the bot, weaknesses, and could they then they would coordinate, study together, and try to figure out, okay, now this person's going to explore this part of the strategy for weaknesses. This person's going to explore this part of the strategy for weaknesses.
It's a kind of psychological warfare showing them the hands.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you didn't think of it that way, but like doing that means you're confident in the bot's ability to win.
Well, that's always like, I wasn't super confident. Yeah. So, going in, like I said, I think I had like 50-50 odds of us winning. When we announced the competition, the poker community decided to gamble on who would win, and their initial odds against us were like 4-1. They were really convinced that the humans were going to pull out a win. The bot ended up winning for 3 days straight, and even then, after 3 days, the betting odds were still just 50-50. And then at that point, it started to look like the humans were coming back. They started to but poker is a very high variance game. And I think what happened is like they thought that they spotted some weaknesses that weren't actually there. And then around day 8, it was just very clear that they were getting absolutely crushed.
Look at this move.
And from that point, for a while there, I was super stressed out, thinking like, oh my god, the humans are coming back, and they found weaknesses, and now we're just going to fix the whole thing. But no, it ended up going in the other direction, and the bot ended up like crushing them.
How did it feel at the end? Like, as a human being, as a person who appreciates the beauty of the game of poker, and as a person who appreciates the beauty of AI, did you feel a certain kind of way about it?
I felt a lot of things, man. I mean, at that point in my life, I had spent 5 years working on this project, and it was a huge sense of accomplishment. I mean, to spend 5 years working on something and finally see it succeed, I wouldn't trade that for anything in the world.
Yeah, because that's a real benchmark. It's not like getting some percent accuracy in a data set. This is like real. This is real world. Yeah. It's just a game. but it's also a game that means a lot to a lot of people. And this is humans doing their best to beat the machine. So this is a real benchmark, unlike anything else.
Yeah, and I mean, this is what I have been hearing about since I was like 16, playing poker, with my friends in high school. The idea that you can find a strategy, approximate the national poker, be able to beat all the poker players involved with it. So to actually see that come to fruition and be realized, it's kind of magical.
Yeah, especially money is on the line too. It's different than chess. And that aspect, like people get. That's why you want to look at betting markets. You want to actually understand what people really think. In the same sense, poker, it's really high stakes because it's money. And to solve that game, that's an amazing accomplishment. So the leap from that to multi-way 6-player poker, how difficult is that jump? And what are some interesting differences between heads-up poker and multi-way poker?
Yeah, so I mentioned, Nash Equilibrium in 2-player zero-sum games. If you play that strategy, you are guaranteed to not lose the expectation no matter what your opponent does. Now, once you go to 6-player poker, you're no longer playing a 2-player zero-sum game. And so there was a lot of debate among the academic community and among the poker community about how well these techniques would extend beyond just 2-player heads-up poker. Now, what I have come to realize is that the techniques actually I thought really would extend to 6-player poker, because even though in theory they don't give you these guarantees outside of 2-player zero-sum games, in practice it gives you a really strong strategy. Now, there were a lot of complications that would come up with 6-player poker besides like the theoretic aspect. I mean, for one, the game is just exponentially larger. So the main thing that allowed us to go from 2-player to 6-player was the idea of depth-related search. So I said before, like, we would do search, plan out like what it's going to do next and for the next several moves. And in Lebradas, that search was done extending all the way to the end. So it would have to start from the turn onwards, like looking maybe 10 moves ahead. It would have to figure out what it was doing for all those moves. Now, when you get to 6-player poker, it can't do that exhaustive search anymore because the game is just way too large. But by only having to look a few moves ahead and stopping there and substituting a value estimate of like how good is that strategy at that point, then we're able to do a much more scalable search.
Is there something cool looking at the paper right now? Is there something cool in the paper in terms of graphics? The game tree traversal, Monte Carlo.
I think if you go down a bit,
figure one, an example of equilibrium selection problem. Ooh, so yeah. What do we know about equilibrium when there's multiple players?
So when you go outside of 2 players, you're some. So a Nash equilibrium is a set of strategies, like one strategy for each player, where no player has an incentive to switch to a different strategy. And so you can kind of think of it as like, imagine you have a game where there's a ring. That's actually the visual here. You've got a ring, and the object of the game is to be as far away from the players as possible. There's a Nash equilibrium is for all the players to be spaced equally apart around this ring. But there's infinitely many different Nash equilibrium, right? There's infinitely many ways to space 4 dots along a ring. And if every single player independently computes a Nash equilibrium, then there's no guarantee that the joint strategy that they're all playing is going to be a Nash equilibrium. They're just going to be like random dots scattered along this ring rather than 4 coordinated dots being equally spaced apart.
Is it possible to sort of optimally do this kind of selection? To do the selection of the equilibrium you're chasing? So is there like a meta problem to be solved here?
So the meta problem is, in some sense, how do you understand a Nash equilibrium that the other players are going to play? And even if you do that, again, there's no guarantee that you're going to win. So, if you're playing Risk, like I said, and all the other players decide to team up against you, you're going to lose. Nash equilibrium doesn't help you. And so there was this big debate about whether Nash equilibrium and all these techniques that computed are even useful once you go outside of 2-player zero-sum games. Now, I think for many games, there is a valid criticism here. And I think when we go to something like diplomacy, we run into this issue that the approach of trying to approximate a Nash equilibrium doesn't really work But it turns out that in six-player poker, because six-player poker is such an adversarial game, where none of the players really try to work with each other, the techniques that were used in two-player poker to try to approximate an equilibrium, those still end up working in practice in six-player poker.
There's some deep way. Six-player poker is just a bunch of heads-up poker like games. One, it's like it's a competitive. So the competitiveness is more fundamental to poker than the cooperation.
Right. Yeah. Poker is just such an adversarial game. There's no cooperation. In fact, you're not even allowed to cooperate in poker. It's considered collusion. It's against the rules. And so for that reason, the techniques have been working really well. And I think that's true more broadly in extremely adversarial games in general.
But that's sort of in practice versus being able to prove something.
That's right. Nobody has that that's the case. And it could be that six-player poker belongs to some class of games where approximating an equilibrium through self-play provably works well. And, you know, there are other classes of games beyond just two-player zero-sum where this is proven to work well. So there are these, you know, kinds of games called potential games. I won't go into, it's kind of like a complicated concept, but there are classes of games where this approach to approximating an equilibrium is proven to work well. Now, six-player poker is not known to belong to one of those classes, but it is possible that there is some class of games where it either really performs well or really performs not that badly.
So, what are some interesting things about Pluribus that was able to achieve human level performance on this, or superhuman level performance on the six-player version?
Personally, I think the most interesting thing about Pluribus is that it was so much cheaper than Libratus. I mean, Libratus, if you had to put a price tag on computational resources that went into it, I would say the final training run was about $100,000. You go to Pluribus, the final training run would cost like less than $150 on AWS.
Is this normalized to computational inflation? So, meaning, does this just have to do with the fact that Pluribus was trained like a year later?
No, it's not. I mean, first of all, like, yeah, computing resources are getting cheaper every day, but you're not going to see a 1,000-fold decrease in the computational resources over 2 years, or even anywhere close to that. The real improvement was algorithmic improvements, and in particular, the ability to do depth-limited search.
So, does depth-limited search also work for Libratus?
Yeah. Yes. So, where this depth-limited search came from is, you know, I developed this technique and ran it on two-player poker first, and that reduced the computational resources needed to make an AI that was superhuman from $100,000 for Libratus to something you could.
What do you learn from that discovery?
What I would take away from that is that algorithmic improvements really do matter.
How would you describe a more general case of limited depth search? Just basically constraining the scale, temporal, or in some other way of the computation you're doing, in some clever way. So, like with like how else do you significantly constrain computation, right?
Well, I think the idea is that we want to be able to leverage search as much as possible, and the way that we were doing Libratus required us to search all the way to the end of the game. Now, if you're playing a game like chess, the idea that you're going to search always to the end of the game is kind of unimaginable, right? Like, there's so many situations where you just won't be able to use search in that case, or the cost would be, prohibitive. And this technique allowed us to leverage search, and without having to pay such a huge computational cost for it, and be able to apply it more broadly.
So, to what degree did you use neural nets for Pluribus, and more generally, what role do neural nets have to play in superhuman level performance in poker?
So we actually did not use neural nets at all for Libratus or Pluribus, and a lot of people found this surprising back in 2017. I think they find it surprising today that we were able to do this without using any neural nets. And I think the reason for that, I think neural nets are incredibly powerful, and the techniques that are used today for poker AIs do rely quite heavily on neural nets. But it wasn't the main challenge for poker. Like, I think what neural nets are really good for, if you're in a situation where finding features for a value function is really difficult, then neural nets are really powerful. And this was the problem in Go, right? Like, the problem in Go was that, or the final problem in Go at least, was that nobody had a good way of looking at a board and figuring out who was winning and describing through a simple algorithm who was winning or losing. And so there, neural nets were super helpful because you could just feed in a lot of different positions for this neural net, and it would be able to predict then who was winning or losing. But in poker, the features weren't the challenge. The challenge was, how do you design a scalable algorithm that would allow you to find this balanced strategy that would understand how to bluff with the right problem.
So can that be somehow incorporated into the value function? The complexity of poker that you've described.
Yeah, so the way the value functions work, like the latest and greatest for AIs, they do use neural nets for the value function. The way it's done is very different from how it's done in a game like chess or Go, because in poker, you have to reason about beliefs. And so the value of a stake depends on the beliefs that players have about what the different cards are. But like if you have pocket aces, then whether that's a really, really good hand or just an okay hand depends on whether you know I have pocket aces. Right? Like if you know that I have pocket aces, then if I bet, you're going to fold me. But if you think that I have a really bad hand, then I could bet with pocket aces and make a ton of money. So the value function in poker these days takes the beliefs as an input, which is very different from like how chess and Go AIs work.
So as a person who appreciates the game, who do you think is the greatest player of all time?
That's a tough question.
Can an AI help answer that question? Can it actually analyze the quality of play, right? So the AI chess engines can give estimates of quality of play, right? I wonder if is there an elo rating type of system for poker? I suppose you could, but there's just not enough. You would have to play a lot of games, right? A very large number of games, like more than you would in chess. A deterministic game makes it easier to estimate elo.
I think it is much harder to estimate something like elo rating in poker. I think it's doable. The problem is that the game is very high variance. So you could be profitable for a year, and you can actually be a bad player just because the variance is so high. I mean, you've got top professional poker players that would lose for a year just because they're on a really bad streak.
So yeah, so for you, you have to have a nice, clean way of saying if player A plays player B and A beats B, that's something, that's a signal. In poker, it's a very
now there is a signal, so you could do this calculation. It would just be much harder. But the same way that AIs have now taken over chess, and all the top professional chess players train with AIs, the same is true for poker. The game has become a very computational. People train with AIs to try to find out where they're making mistakes, try to learn from the AIs to improve their strategy. So now, so the game has been revolutionized in the past 5 years by the development of AI in the sport.
The skill with which you avoided the question is the greatest of all time is impressive.
So my feeling is that it's a difficult question because just like in chess, where you can't really compare Magnus Carlsen today to Garry Kasparov, because the game has evolved so much. The poker players today are so far beyond the skills of people that were playing even 10 or 20 years ago. So you look at the kinds of like all-stars that were on ESPN at like the height of the poker boom. Pretty much all those players are actually not that good at the game today. At least the strategy aspect. They might still be good at like, reading the player at the other side of the table and trying to figure out like are they bluffing or not. But in terms of the actual like computational strategy of the game, a lot of them have really struggled to keep up with that development. Now, so for that reason, I'll give an answer, and I'm going to say Daniel Durania, who you actually had on a podcast recently. So it was a great episode. Yeah.
And Will's going to hate you so much.
And I'm going to give him credit because he is one of the few like old school really strong players that have kept up with the development of AI.
He's constantly studying the way of playing.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think a lot of the old school poker players have just kind of given up on that aspect, and I got to give them credit for keeping up with all the developments that are happening in the sport.
Yeah, it's fascinating to watch. It's fascinating to watch where it's headed. Yeah, there you go. Some love for Daniel. Quick pause. Bathroom break.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's go from poker to diplomacy. What is, at a high level, the game of diplomacy?
Yeah, so I talked a lot about two-player zero-sum games, and what's interesting about diplomacy is that it's very different from these like adversarial games like chess, Go, poker, even StarCraft. Diplomacy has a much bigger philosophy to it. It's a 7-player game. It was actually created in the 50s, and it takes place before World War. It's like a map of Europe, 7 great powers, and they're all trying to form alliances with each other. There's a lot of negotiation going on, and so the whole focus of the game is on forming alliances with the other players to take on the other players.
England, Germany, Russia, Turkey, Austria, Hungary, Italy, and France.
That's right. So the way the game works is on each turn, you spend about 5 to 15 minutes talking to the other players in private, and you make all sorts of deals with them. You say like, "Hey, let's work together. Let's team up against this other player." Because the only way that you can make progress is by working with somebody else against the others. And then after that negotiation period is done, all the players simultaneously submit their moves, and they're all executed at the same time. And so you can tell people like, "Hey, I'm going to support you this turn," but then you don't follow through with it, and they're only going to figure it out once they see the moves being read off.
How much of it is natural language, like written, actual text? How much is like you're actually saying phrases that are structured?
So there's different ways to play the game. You can play it in person, and in that case, it's all natural language. Free-form communication. There's no constraints on the kinds of deals that you can make, the kinds of things that you can discuss. You can also play online, so you can send long emails back and forth. You can play it live online or voice chat. But the focus, the important thing to understand is that this is unstructured communication. You can say whatever you want. You can make any sorts of deals that you want, and everything is done privately. So it's not like you're all around the board together having a conversation. You're grabbing somebody off the corner and conspiring behind everybody else's back about what you're planning.
And there's no limit, in theory, the conversation you can have directly with one person.
That's right. You can make all sorts of. You can talk about anything. You can say like, "Hey, let's have long-term plans against this guy." You can say like, "Hey, can you support me this turn? In return, I'll give you some things next turn." Or just you can talk about like what you talked about with somebody else and gossip about like what they're planning. The way that I would describe the game is that it's kind of like a mix between Risk, poker, and the TV show Survivor. There's like this big element of like trying to, there's a big social element. And the best way that I would describe the game is that it's really a game about people rather than the pieces.
Does Whoopi Goldberg not have eyebrows?
Risk, because it is a map, it's kind of war game like poker, because there's a game theory on it. It's very kind of strategic. So you could convert it to artificial intelligence problem. And then Survivor, because of the social component. That's a strong social component. I saw that somebody said online that the internet version of the game has this quality that it's easier to do like role play, as opposed to being yourself. You can actually you can really imagine yourself as the leader of France or Russia and so on. You can really pretend to be that person. It's actually fun to really lean into being that leader.
Yeah, so some players do go this route. They just like kind of view it as a strategy game, but also a free-playing game where they can like act out like, what would I be like if I was, a leader of France in 1900?
And they sometimes use like the old-timey language, to like, or how they imagine the elites would talk at that time. Anyway, what are the different turns of the game? Like, what are the rounds?
Yeah, so on every turn, you've got like a bunch of different units that you start out with. So you start out controlling like just a few units, and the object of the game is to gain control of each unit. If you're able to do that, then you can. But like I said, the only way that you can do that is by working with players. So on every turn, you can issue a move order for each of your units. You can move them to an adjacent territory, or you can keep them where they are, or you can support a move or hold of a different unit. So
What are the territories? Well, how is the map divided up?
it's kind of like Risk, where the map is divided up into like 50 different territories. Now, you can enter a territory if you're moving into that territory with more support than the person that's there, or the person that's trying to move there. So if you're moving in,
It's like Jerry Rice girls.
then if neither of you have
Fucking the San Francisco tree.
and neither do make progress. If you have a unit that's supporting that territory,
Jerry Rice,
it's two versus
a
one, you'll
Roni,
kick them out.
the
You'll
San
have to increase
Francisco tree.
What is it?
support is like it's an action that you can issue. You can say this unit, you can write down this unit is supporting this other unit to this territory.
Are these units from opposing forces?
They could be. They could be. And this is where the interesting aspect of the game comes in, because you can support your own units in the territory, but you can also support other people's units in the territory. And so that's what the negotiations really all around.
But you don't have to do the thing you say you do.
And
Right.
this, yeah. And
So you can say I'm going to support you, but then backstab the person.
yeah, that's absolutely.
And that tension is core to the game.
That tension is absolutely the fact that you can make all sorts of promises, but you have to reason about the fact that like, they might not trust you if you say you're going to do something, or they might be lying to you when they say they're going to support you.
So maybe just to jump back, what's the history of the game in general? Is it true that Henry Kissinger the game and JFK? I read like a bunch of people that was that just one of those things that the cool kids say they do, but they don't actually do.
So the game was created in the 50s,
Yeah.
and from what I understand, it was JFK. It was played in like the JFK White House. Henry Kissinger's favorite game. I don't know if it's true, but that's definitely what I've heard.
It's interesting that they won World War I when it was created after World War II.
So the story that I've heard for the creation of the game was created by somebody that had looked at the history of the 20th century and saw World War I as a failure. So,
Sure.
you know, they saw the fact that this war broke out as like the diplomats of all these countries like really failed to prevent the war, and he wanted to create a game that basically teach people about diplomacy. And it's really fascinating. Like in his ideal version of diplomacy, nobody actually wins the game, because the whole point is that if somebody is about to win, then the other players should be able to work together to stop that person from winning. And so the ideal version of the game is just one where nobody actually wins. And you know, it kind of has a nice like take-home message then that you know war is ultimately true. And
optimal, that feudal optimal to be achieved with great diplomacy. So, is there some asymmetry in terms of which is more powerful, Russia, Germany versus France, and so on?
So I think the general consensus is that France is the strongest power in the game, but the beautiful thing about diplomacy is that it's self-balancing, right? So the fact that France has an inherent advantage from the beginning means that the other players are less likely to work with it.
I saw that Russia has 4 units versus 4 of something that the other have 3 of something.
That's true, yes. Russia starts off with 4 units, while all the other players start with 3. But Russia is also in a much more vulnerable position because they have to they have a lot of neighbors as well.
Got it. Larger territory, right. More border to defend. Okay. What else is important to know about the rules? So how many rounds? Like, is this iterative game? Is there? It's finite. You just keep going indefinitely.
Usually the game lasts, I would say about 15 or 20 turns. There's in theory no way it could last longer, but at some point, I mean, if you're playing a house game with friends, at some point you just get tired and you all agree, like, okay, we're going to end the game here, call it a draw. If you're playing online, there's usually like set limits on when the game will actually end.
And what's the end determination condition? Like, does one country have to conquer everything else?
So if somebody is able to actually gain control of the majority of the map, then they've won the game. That is a solo victory, as it's called. Now that pretty rarely happens, especially with strong players, because like I said, the game is designed to incentivize the other players to put a stop to that and all work together to stop this superpower. Usually what ends up happening is that, you know, all the players agree to a draw, and then the score, the win, is divided among the remaining players. There's a lot of different scoring systems. The one that we use in our research basically gives a score relative to how much control you have on the map. So the more that you control, the higher the score.
What's the history of using this game as a benchmark for AI to people using it?
Yeah, so people have been working on AI for policies since about the 80s. There was some really exciting research back then, but the approach that was taken is very different from what we see today. The research is a very rule-based approach, kind of a heuristic approach. It's very in line with the kind of research that was being done in the 80s. Basically trying to input human knowledge into the strategy of the AI. And it's understandable. I mean, the game is so incredibly different, so much more complicated than the kinds of games that people were working on, like chess and Go and poker. And it was honestly even hard to start making any progress in the class.
Can you just formulate what is the problem from an AI perspective, and why is it hard? Why is it a challenging game to solve?
So there's a lot of aspects of the policy that make it a huge challenge. First of all, you have a natural language component, and I think this really is what makes it arguably the most difficult game among the major benchmarks. The fact that it's not about moving pieces on the board. Your action space is basically all the different sentences that you could communicate with somebody else in this game. And
is there, we just link on that? So is part of it like the ambiguity in the language? If it was very strict, if you narrow the set of possible sentences you could do, would that simplify the game significantly?
The real difficulty is the breadth of things that you can talk about. You can have natural language in other games, and like Settlers of Catan, for example, you could have a natural language Settlers of Catan AI. But the things that you're going to talk about are basically like, am I trading you 2 sheep per wood or 3 sheep per wood? Whereas in a game like Diplomacy, the breadth of conversations that you're going to have, am I going to support you? Are you going to support me in return? Which units are going to do what? What did this other person promise you? They're lying because they told this other person that they're going to do this instead. If you help me out this turn, then in the future I'll do these things that will help you out. The depth and breadth of these conversations is really complicated, and it's all being done in natural language. Now you could approach it. We actually consider doing this, having a simplified language to make this complexity smaller. But ultimately, we thought the most impactful way of doing this research would be to address the natural language component head on, and just try to go for the full game.
Just looking at several games, what the conversations look like. Greetings, England. This should prove to be a fun game. All of the private press is going to be made public at the end. At the least, it will be interesting to see if the press changes because of that. Anyway, good. Okay. So there's
yeah, that's just kind of like the generic readings at the beginning of the game. I think that the meat comes a little bit later when you're starting to talk about specific strategy and stuff.
I agree. There are a lot of advantages to the two of us keeping in touch, and our nations make strong natural allies in the middle game. So that kind of stuff. Making friends, making enemies.
Yeah, or if you look at the next line, so the person saying I've heard bits about a Lepanto octopus opening, basically telling Austria hey, just a heads up, I've heard these whispers about what might be good or not behind your back.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of complexities in that, in the language of that, right? To interpret what that means. It's hard for us humans. For AI, it's harder. You have to understand at every level the semantics of that.
Right. I mean, there's the complexity in understanding somebody is saying this. What does that mean? And then there's also the complexity of should I be telling this person? It's I've overheard these whispers. Should I be telling this person that hey, you might be getting attacked by this other power?
Okay, so
Jay Bruner.
How are we supposed to think about? Because that's the natural language. How do you even begin trying to solve this game? It seems like.
Oh, no, did I get fucking banned?
Yeah, and I mean, there's the natural language aspect, and then even besides the natural language aspect, you also have the cooperative. And I think this is actually something that I find really interesting. If you look at all of the previous game AI breakthroughs, they've all happened in these purely adversarial games where you don't actually need to understand how humans play the game. It's all just AI, right? You look at checkers, chess, Go, poker, StarCraft, Dota 2. Like in some of those cases, they leveraged human data, but they never needed to. They were always just trying to have a scalable outcome that then they could throw a lot of computational resources at, a lot of memory at, and then eventually converge to an approximation of a national equilibrium. This perfect strategy that in the two players you're game guarantees that they're going to be able to not lose to any opponents.
So you can't leverage play. So
You can leverage self play, but it's no longer sufficient to beat humans.
so how do you integrate it with this?
So what you have to do is incorporate data. And to kind of give you some inspiration for why this is the case,
This
like,
one.
imagine you're playing negotiation.
Look at this one.
But you're training completely without any.
Hey, look who it is.
AI is not going to suddenly figure out how to communicate in English.
How are you? Hello. I hope you were well.
English. It's going to figure out some weird robot language that only it will understand. And then when you stick that in the game with six other humans, they're going to think this person's talking gibberish and they're just going to ally with each other and team against the bot. Or not even team against them, just not work with them. And so in order to be able to play this game with humans, it has to understand the human way of playing the game, not this machine way of playing the game.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Right. That's a nuanced thing to understand because a chess playing program doesn't need to play like a human to be a human.
Exactly.
We're here.
Hello, how are
You
you?
have to understand how humans play the game so they can understand how to play the game. If they
Yeah, thankfully. Excellent. Okay, sleep. Positive energy, that's right. Okay, great. Well, wonderful. Just chilling. Hey, look at you. Hello. Okay. Good on you. Stay strong. It's it's hard. It's hard. Cool. I understand. How did you sleep? I can hear you. Okay. How did you sleep? You cannot work today, or you can't? Okay, good. You seem like you're in a really good mood. Good on you. Excellent. Well, I'm glad that you slept well. And if you need anything, just let me know, okay? Good. I do need to know something. Is your name Roxanne? Is a beautiful name. That's all I wanted to know. Hi, Roxanne. You're welcome.
need to have abide by those conventions.
Okay.
Clean in some deep sense, the spirit of the Turing test was formulated by Alan Turing. Is it? In some sense, this is what the Turing test actually looks like. So, because of open-ended natural language conversation seems like very difficult to evaluate. Here, at a high stakes where humans are trying to win a game, that seems like how you actually perform the Turing test.
I think it's different from the Turing test. Like the way that the Turing test is formulated, it's about trying to distinguish a human from a machine and seeing, oh, could the machine successfully pass as a human in this adversarial setting where the player is trying to figure out whether it's a machine or a human. Whereas in diplomacy, it's not about trying to figure out whether this player is a human or a machine. It's ultimately about whether I can work with this player, regardless if they are a human or a machine. And can the machine do that better than a human?
Yeah, I'm going to think about that, but that just feels like the implied requirement for that is for the machine to be human-like.
I think that's true. That if you're going to play this human game, you have to somehow adapt to the human surroundings and the human play style.
To win, you have to adapt. So you can't, if you're the outsider, if you're not human-like, I feel like that's a losing strategy.
I think that's correct.
Yeah. So okay. What are the complexities here? What was your?
Before I get to that, I think I should explain like why we decided to work on diplomacy.
Yeah.
So basically, what happened is in 2019, I was wrapping up the work on 6-player pluribus and was trying to think about what to work on next. And I had been seeing like all these other breakthroughs happening in AI. I mean, like 2019, you have AlphaStar beating
Yes.
StarCraft. You've got
Oh, okay.
Dota
You
2
do you, girl.
happening in OpenAI. You have GPT-2 or GPT-3 coming. I think it was GPT-2 at the time, and it became clear that AI was progressing really, really rapidly. And people were throwing out like other games about what should be the next challenge for multi-agent AI, and I just felt like we had to aim bigger. If you look at a game like chess or a game like Go, they took decades of researchers to ultimately reach superhuman performance at. I mean, like chess took 40 years of AI research. Go took another 20 years. And we thought that diplomacy would be this incredibly difficult challenge that could easily take a decade to make an AI that could play competently. So we felt like that was a goal worth aiming for. And so honestly, I was kind of reluctant to work on it at first because I thought it was like too far out of the realm of possibility. But I was talking to a coworker of mine, Adam Lear, and he was basically saying like, why not aim for it? We'll learn some interesting things along the way, and maybe it'll be possible. And so we decided to go for it. And I think it was the right choice considering just how much progress there was in AI, and that progress has continued in the years since.
So winning in diplomacy, what does that really look like? It means talking to 6 other players, 6 other entities, agents, and convincing them of stuff that you want them to be convinced of. Like what exactly? I'm trying to get to deeply understand what the problem is.
Ultimately, the problem is simple to quantify, right? Like you're going to play this game with humans, and you want your score on average to be as high as possible. If you can say like I am winning more than any human alive, then you're a champion diplomacy player. Now, ultimately, we didn't reach that. We got to human level performance. We played about 40 games with real humans online. The bot came in second out of all players that played 5 or more games, and so not like number 1, but way higher.
Well, what was the expertise level? Are they beginners? Are they intermediate players? Advanced players?
So
Give a sense.
That's a great question. So I think this kind of goes into how do you measure the performance in diplomacy, and I would argue that when you're measuring performance in a game like this, you don't actually want to measure it in games with all expert players. It's kind of like if you're developing a self-driving car, you don't want to measure that car on the road with a bunch of expert stunt drivers. You want to put it on a road like an actual American city and see, is this car crashing less often than an expert driver? So that's the metric that we're saying, like, we're going to stick this game we're going to stick the spot in games, a wide variety of skill levels, and then are we doing better than a strong or expert human player would in the same situation?
That's quite brilliant because I played a lot of sports in my life, like tennis, judo, whatever, and it's somehow almost easier to go against experts almost always. I think they're more predictable in the quality of play. The space of strategies you're operating under is or against experts. It's more fun. It's really frustrating against beginners. Also, because beginners talk trash to you when they somehow defeat you. So that's a human thing that they just have to be worried about that. But yeah, the variance in strategies is greater, especially with natural language. It's just all over the place then. True.
Yeah, and honestly, when you look at what makes a good
Kids.
player,
Remember
obviously,
earlier I was
they have
talking about
themselves in games with others
having to
on
take
their
that
team,
shit.
where they really shine is when they're playing these weak
Go
players,
time.
and they know how to take advantage.
I might even need a
of the
go
fact that
bag.
they're a weak player, that
Like
they
when
won't
you
be able to pull off
have
a
a
stab as well,
pregnant person in the house and they need
they
to
have
get
certain
to the
tendencies and they can take them under their wing and persuade them to
hospital,
that might not even
grab
be
your go bag. What's in the go bag, Rabbi?
They're really
I don't
good
know.
defensive players
Diapers,
are
I
able
guess.
to take
Psych?
advantage.
Like an
that
iPod
there are
and
some
like
players.
Okay, so if you have to
I
incorporate
don't know.
human play data,
iPods.
how do you do that? How
I
do you
mean,
do that?
probably like
to
a.
train
What would you have in
an
yours?
AI system?
Well, I would have.
Yeah, so that's
I don't think you
that's
need
really like
condoms.
what we're talking about. How do we
Not sure. I would. Let's see
leverage
here.
the benefits of self-play that if it's
I would
successful
bring
in
well,
all
like
these other
phone
games,
chargers. I would want to live stream it,
keeping
but if
the
that's
strategies,
not
as
phone
human
chargers, phone
and so what
cord,
we did is we
like
first
power
trained
banks,
this language model, and then we made
extra
that
change of
language
clothes,
model
pillows,
on a set of intents.
maybe like
We call
slippers or
them
shoes or
basically
something.
like an action that we want to
Anything
play
else?
and an action that we would like.
I don't know. A plunger? Who the fuck
So
knows?
this
I had
gives
to
us
take a
way
shit.
to generate dialogue that's not just trying to imitate the human style, whatever he would say in the situation, but to actually give it an intent, a purpose in its communication. We can talk about a specific move, we can make a specific request, and the determination of what that move is that we're discussing comes from a strategic reasoning model that uses reinforcement planning.
So computing the intents for all the players.
Maybe like a.
How's that?
Well,
done?
it's definitely like a
So,
mineral oil. I
as
can
a
feel it.
starting
I
point.
can feel it.
Is
It's
that
gurgling.
reinforcement
Well, you're
learning, or
gonna
is that
say
just
it's a.
determining what the optimal is?
Well, what's
for
it?
intents?
It's a combination of
Yeah, I don't know.
reinforcement learning
Maybe
and
raw
planning.
sienna.
Actually, very similar.
We
to
got
how
a
you
raw
approach- how you
sienna.
approach poker and how
Double
people
A.
approach like chess and
One.
Go as well. We're using self-play
Maybe
and,
two.
and search to try to figure out what is an optimal move for us and what is a desirable move that we would like this other player to play. Now, the difference between the way that we approached reinforcement learning and search in this game versus those previous games is that we have to keep it compatible. We have to understand how the other person is likely to play rather than just assuming that they're going to play like a machine.
And how language gets them to play in a way that maximizes the chance of following the intent we want them to follow. Okay, how do you do that? How do you connect language to intent?
So the way that RL and planning is done is actually not using language. So we're coming up with this like plan for the action that we're going to play and the other person's going to play, and then we feed that action into the dialogue model that will then send a message according to these plans.
So the language model there is mapping action to message, one word at a time.
Basically one message at a time. So we'll feed into the dialogue model, like here are the actions that you should be discussing. Here's the message. Here's like the content of the message that we would like you to send, and then it will actually generate a message that corresponds to that.
Okay, does this actually work?
It works surprisingly well.
Okay, how? Oh man, the number of ways it probably goes horribly. I would have imagined it goes horribly wrong. So how the heck does it affect it at all?
I mean, there are a lot of ways this can fail. So, for example, I mean, you could have a situation where it's basically like we don't tell the language model like here are the pieces of our action or the other person's action that you should be communicating. And so, like, let's say you're about to attack somebody, you probably don't want to tell them that you're going to attack them, but there's nothing in the language. Like, the language model is not very smart at the end of the day, so it doesn't really have a way of knowing like, well, what should I be talking about? Should I tell this person how to attack them or not? So we have to like develop a lot of other techniques that deal with that. Like one of the things we do, for example, is we try to calculate if I'm going to send this message, what would I expect the other person to do in response? So if it's a message like, "Hey, I'm going to attack you this turn," they're probably going to, attack us or defend against that attack. And so we have a way of recognizing, like, hey, sending this message is a negative value action, and we should not send this message.
So yeah, for particular kinds of messages, you have like an extra function that does estimates the value of that message.
Yeah. So we have these kinds of filters that, like.
So it's a filter. So there's a good, and is that filter in your network or is it rule based?
That's a neural network. So it's a combination. It's a neural network, but it's also using planning. It's trying to compute like what is the policy that the other players are going to play, given that this message has been sent, and then is that better than not sending a message?
I feel like that's how my brain works too. Like there's a language model that generates random crap, and then there's these other neural nets that are essentially filters. At least that's what I tweet. I'll usually my process of tweeting, I'll think of something, and it's hilarious to me, and then about 5 seconds later, the filter network comes in and says, no, it's not funny at all. I mean, there's something interesting to that kind of process. So you have a set of actions that you want, you have an intent you want to achieve, an intent that you want your opponent to achieve, then you generate messages, and then you evaluate if those messages will achieve the goal you want.
Yeah, and we're filtering for several things. We're filtering, like, is this a sensible message? So sometimes language models will generate messages that are just like totally nonsense, and we try to filter those out. We also try to filter out messages that are basically lies. So diplomacy has this reputation as a game that's really about deception and lying, but we try to actually minimize the amount of the bot would lie. This was actually mostly
or are you? No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, like, part of the reason for this is that we actually found that lying would make the bot become worse in the long run, end up with a lower score. Because once the bot lies, people would never trust it again. And trust is a huge aspect of the game of diplomacy.
Taking notes here. I think this applies to polite lessons too.
Oh, I think it's really, it's strong.
So, like, lying is a dangerous thing to do. Like, you want to avoid obvious lying.
Yeah, I mean, I think when people play diplomacy for the first time, they approach it as a game of deception and lying, and they ultimately, if you talk to top diplomacy players, what they'll tell you is that diplomacy is a game about trust, and being able to build trust in an environment that encourages people to not trust anyone. So that's the ultimate tension in diplomacy. How can this AI reason about whether you are being honest in your communication, and how can the AI persuade you that it is being honest when it is telling you that, yeah, I'm actually going to support you this time?
Is there some sense, I don't know if you step back and think, that this process will indirectly help us study human psychology? So, like, if trust is the ultimate goal, wouldn't that help us understand what are the fundamental aspects of forming trust between humans and AI? I mean, that's a really, really important question. It's much bigger than strategy games. It's how can this fundamental to the human-robot interaction problem? How do we form trust between intelligent entities?
So one of the things I'm really excited about with diplomacy, there's never really been a good domain to investigate these kinds of questions. And diplomacy gives us a domain where trust is really at the center of it. And it's not just like you've hired a bunch of mechanical Turkers that, are being paid trying to get through the task as quickly as possible. You have these people that are really invested in the outcome of the game, and they're really trying to do the best that they can. And so I'm really excited that we're able to, we actually put together this, we're open sourcing all of our models, we're open sourcing all of the code, and we're making this data that we've used available to researchers so that they can investigate these kinds of questions.
So the data of the different human and the AI play of diplomacy and the models that you use for the generation of messages and the filtering.
Yeah, not just even the data of the AI with the humans, but all the training data that that we used to train the AI to understand how humans play the game. We're setting up a system where researchers will be able to apply to be able to gain access to that data and be able to use it in their own research.
We should say, what is the name?
We're calling the bot system.
So, and what's the name? Like your open sourcing, what's the name of the repository and the project? Is it also just called Sister of the Big Project, or just coming up with a name?
The data set comes from this website, webdiplomacy.net. Is this site that's been online for like 20 years now, and it's one of the main sites that people use to play diplomacy on it. We've got like 50,000 games of diplomacy, natural language communication, over 10 million messages. So it's a pretty massive data set that people can use to. We're hoping that the academic community, the research community, is able to use it for all sorts of interesting research questions.
So, do you, from having studied this game, is it a sufficiently rich problem space to explore this kind of human AI interaction?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's maybe the best data set that I can think of out there to investigate these kinds of questions of negotiation, trust, persuasion. I wouldn't say it's the best data set in the world for human AI interaction. That's a very broad field, but I think that it's definitely up there as if you're interested in language models interacting with humans in a setting where their incentives are not really aligned. This seems like a data set for investigating.
So you have a paper with some impressive paper that taking this problem on. What's the most exciting thing to you in terms of the results from the paper?
Well, I think there's
ideas or results.
Yeah, I think there's a few aspects of the results and that I think are really exciting. So first of all, the fact that we were able to achieve such strong performance, I was surprised by it. Pleasantly surprised by it. So we played 40 games of diplomacy with real humans, and bot placed second out of all players that have played 5 or more games. So it's about 80 players total. 19 of whom played 5 or more games, and the bot was ranked second out of those players. And the bot was really good in 2 dimensions. One, being able to strong connection with other players on the board, being able to persuade them to work with it, being able to coordinate with them about how it's going to work with them, and then also the raw tactical and strategic aspect of the game. Being able to understand what the other players are likely to do, being able to model their behavior and respond appropriately to that. The bot also really excelled at.
What are some interesting things that the bot said? By the way, are you allowed to swear in the are there rules to what you're allowed to say and not diplomacy?
You can say whatever you want. I think the site will get very angry at you if you start threatening somebody. And we actually,
or if you threaten somebody, you're supposed to do it politely.
Yeah, politely. Keep it in character. The bot. We actually had a researcher watching the bot 24/7. Or whenever we play a game, we had a bot watching it to make sure that it wouldn't go off the rails and start threatening somebody or something like that.
I would just love it if the bot started mocking everybody, some weird quirky strategies would emerge. Have you seen anything interesting that you? Oh, that's a weird behavior here of the filter or the language model. That was weird too.
There were definitely things that the bot would do that were not in line with how humans would approach the game, and that, in a good way. Humans actually, we've talked to some expert diplomacy players about these results, and their takeaway is that maybe humans are approaching this the wrong way, and this is actually the right way to play the game. So
what's required to win? What does it mean to mess up or to exploit the suboptimal behavior of a player? Is there optimally rational behavior and irrational behavior that you need to estimate, that kind of stuff? What stands out to you? Is there a crack that you can exploit? Is there a weakness that you can exploit in the game that everybody's looking for?
Well, I think you're asking kind of 2 questions there. So one, modeling the irrationality and the suboptimality of humans. You can't, in diplomacy, you can't treat all the other players like machines. And if you do that, you're going to end up playing really poorly. And so we actually ran this experiment. So we trained a bot in a 2-player 0 version of diplomacy, the same way that you approach a game like chess or poker, and the bot was superhuman. It would crush any opponent. And then we took that same training approach and we trained a bot full 7-player version of the game through self-play without any human data. And we stuck it in a game with 6 humans, and it got even in the version of the game where there's no explicit natural language communication, it still got this because it just wouldn't be able to understand how the other players were approaching the game and be able to work with that.
Can you just linger on that meaning like there's an individual personality to each player and you're supposed to remember that? But what do you mean it's not able to understand the players?
Well, it would, for example, expect the human to support it in a certain way. When the human would simply think no, I'm not supposed to support you here. It's kind of like, if you develop a self-driving car and it's trained completely from scratch with other self-driving cars, it might learn to drive on the side of the road. That's a totally reasonable thing to do if you're with these other self-driving cars that are also driving on the side of the road. But if you put it in an American city, it's going to crash.
Well, I guess the intuition I'm trying to build up is why does it then crush a human player on heads up?
This is an aspect of 2-player zero-sum versus games that involve cooperation. So in a 2-player zero-sum game, you can do self-play from scratch, and you will arrive at the Nash equilibrium where you don't have to worry about the other player playing in a very human optimal style. That's just going to be the only way that deviating from a Nash equilibrium would change things is if it helped you.
So, what's the dynamic of cooperation that's effective with diplomacy? Do you always have to have one friend in the game?
So what happened?
You always want to maximize your friends and minimize your enemies.
Got it. And boy, in the line to play there. So the more friends you have, the better.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you have to
Starting
attack
off
somebody
with
that's
the
not going to make progress.
Right, so that's
It's an interesting topic. I don't know how it never happened. But it started off with people
too close to geopolitics of
Then it
actual
went into
military
solid
conflict
dump.
in the world. Okay.
It's like a
That's
I don't
fascinating.
know.
So that cooperation element is what makes the game really, really
6.
Yeah. And to give you an
Very
an
quickly
example
moved into
of
a
how
1.
this suboptimality
So we had the
irrationality
queen,
comes into play,
allegedly. Who's
there's
perhaps
a really common situation in a game of diplomacy where
the
one
brow.
player starts to win. They're at the point where they're controlling about half the
like
game.
7.
And the remaining players who have all been fighting each
Then
other
a
the whole
1.
game
Diarrhea.
all have to
Totally.
work together now to stop this other player from winning.
Oh,
Everybody's
calm down,
lose.
woman.
And it's kind of like Game of Thrones. I don't know if you've seen the show. You got the others from the north, and all the people have to work out the differences and stop them from taking over.
That was amazing.
And the bot will do this. The bot will work with the other players to stop the superpower from winning. But if it's trained from scratch, or it doesn't really have a good grounding in how to approach it, it will also at the same time attack the other players with its extra units. So all the units that are not necessary to stop the superpower from winning, it will use those to grab as many centers as possible from the other players. And in totally rational play, the other players should just live with that. They have to understand, hey, a score of 1 is better than a score of 0. So okay, these are my centers, but I'll deal with it. But humans don't act that way, right? The human gets really angry at the bot and ends up throwing the game because, I'm going to screw you over because you did something that's not fair to me.
Got it. And I used to model that. It's possible to model that kind of human frustration.
Yeah, exactly. So that is something that seems almost impossible to model purely from scratch without any human data. It's a very cultural thing. And so you need human data to be able to understand that, hey, that's how humans behave. And you have to work around that. It might be suboptimal, it might be irrational, but that's an aspect of humanity that you have to deal with.
So how difficult is it to train on human data? That human data is very a purely generated.
That's actually one of the challenges that we faced in research, that we had a good amount of about 50,000 data. What we try to do is leverage as much stuff as possible while still leveraging data. So what we do is we do self-play, very similar to how we do, but we try to regularize the self-play towards the human. Basically, the way to think about it is we penalize the bot for choosing actions that are very unlikely under the human data set. And
So there is some kind of function that says this is human-like enough.
yeah, so we train a bot through supervised learning to model the human play as much as possible. So we basically train a neural net on those 50,000 games, and that gives us a policy that resembles to some extent how humans actually play the game. Now, this isn't a perfect model of human play because we don't have unlimited data. We don't have unlimited neural net capacity, but it gives us some approximation.
Is there some data on the internet that's useful besides just diplomacy? So on the language side of things, there's some. Can you go to Reddit and so sort of background model simulation that's useful for the game of diplomacy?
Yeah, absolutely. And so for language model, which is kind of like a separate question. We didn't use the language model during the self-play training, but we pre-trained the language model on tons of internet data as much as possible, and then we fine-tuned it specifically on the diplomacy games. So we are able to leverage the wider data set in order to fill in some of the gaps in how communication happens more broadly, besides just specifically in these diplomacy games.
Okay, cool. So what are some interesting things that came to life from this work to you? Like, what are some insights about games where natural language is involved and cooperation, deep cooperation is involved?
Well, I think there's a few insights. So first of all, the fact that you can't rely purely or largely on self-play. You really have to have an understanding of how humans approach the game. I think that's one of the biggest conclusions that I'm drawing from this work, and that is, I think, applicable more broadly to a lot of different games. So we've actually already taken the approaches that we use for diplomacy and tried them on cooperative card games, for example, and we've had a lot of success in that game as well.
What the fuck happened?
On the language side, I think the fact that we were able to control the language model through this intense approach was very effective. And it allowed us, instead of just imitating how humans would communicate, we were able to feed into superhuman strategies that it can then generate more responses.
Is there something to say about detecting whether a person or AI is lying?
The bot doesn't explicitly try to calculate whether something is lying. But what it will do is try to predict what actions they're going to take given communication, given the message.
Shut the fuck up, God.
So given our conversation, what do I think you're going to do? And implicitly, there is a calculation about whether you're lying to me in that. If you're, based on your messages, if I think you're going to attack me this turn, even though your messages say that you're not, then, essentially the bot is predicting that you're lying. But it doesn't view it as lying the same way that we view it as lying.
But you could probably reformulate it with all the same data and make it classify lying or not.
Yeah, I think you could do that. That was not something that we were focused on, but I think that it is possible that, if you came up with some measurements of what does it mean to tell a lie, because there's a spectrum, right? Like if you're withholding some information, is that a lie? If you're mostly telling the truth, but you forgot to mention this one action out of 10, is that a lie? It's hard to draw the line, but if you're willing to do that, and then you could possibly use it to
This feels like an argument in a relationship now. What constitutes a lie? Depends what you mean. The definition of the word is okay. Still, it's fascinating because trust and lying is all intermixed into this, and it's language models that are becoming more and more sophisticated. It's a fascinating space to explore. What do you see as the future of this work that is inspired by the breakthrough performance that you gained here?
I think there's a few different directions to take this work. I think really what it's showing us is the potential that language models have. I mean, I think a lot of people didn't think that this kind of result was possible even today, despite all the progress that's been made in language models. And so it shows us how we can leverage the power of things like self-play on top of language models to get increasingly better performance. And the ceiling is really much higher than what we have right now.
Is this transferable to
Somewhere
chatbots
in Africa.
for the more general task of dialogue?
It's actually
There is a kind of negotiation here, a dance between entities that try to cooperate and at the same time a little bit adversarial, which I think maps somewhat to the general, the entire process of Reddit.
this is awful.
Or like instant communication. You're cooperating, you're
No, you're
adversarial, you have debates, you're having camaraderie, all that kind of stuff.
I think one of the things that's really useful about diplomacy is that we have a well-defined value function. There is a well-defined score that the bot is trying to optimize. And in a setting like a general chatbot setting, it would need that kind of objective in order to fully leverage the techniques that we've developed.
What about what we talked about earlier with NPCs inside video games? Like how can it be used to create for Elder Scrolls 6 more compelling NPCs that you could talk to instead of committing all kinds of violence with a sword and fighting dragons, just sit in a tavern and drink all day and talk to the chatbot.
The way that we've approached AI is you condition the language on an intent. Now, that intent in diplomacy is an action, but it doesn't have to be. And you can imagine, you could have NPCs in video games or metaverse or whatever, where there's some intent or there's some objective that they're trying to maximize, and you can specify what that is. And then the language can correspond to that intent. Now, I'm not saying that this is happening imminently, but I'm saying that this is like a future application potentially of this direction of research.
So, what's the more general formulation of this? Making self-play be able to scale the way self-play does and still maintain human-like behavior.
The way that we approach self-play in diplomacy is like we're trying to come up with good intents to condition the language model on. And the space of intents is actions that could be played in the game. Now, there is like the potential to have a broader set of intents. Things like, long-term cooperation or long-term objectives or, gossip about what another player was saying. These are things that we're currently not conditioning the language model on, and so we're not able to control it to say like, oh, you should be talking about this thing right now. But it's quite possible that you could expand the scope of intents to be able to allow it to talk about those things. Now, in the process of doing that, the self-play would become much more complicated. And so that is the potential for future work.
Okay, the increase in the number of intents. I still am not quite clear how you keep the self-play integrated into the human world.
Yeah,
I'm a little bit loose on on understanding how you do that.
So we train a neural net to imitate the human data as closely as possible, and that's what we call the anchor policy. And now when we're doing self-play, the problem with the anchor policy is that it's not a perfect approximation of how humans actually play. Because we don't have infinite data, because we don't have unlimited neural network capacity, it's actually a relatively suboptimal approximation of how humans actually play. And we can improve that approximation by adding planning and RL. And so what we do is we get a better approximation, a better model to play by, during the self-play process, we say you can deviate from this human anchor policy if there is an action that has, particularly high expected value. But it would have to be a really high expected value in order to deviate from this human policy. So you basically say, try to maximize your expected value while at the same time stay as close as possible to the human policy. And there is a parameter that controls the relative weighting of those competing objectives.
So the question I have is how sophisticated can the anchor policy get? So I have a policy that approximates human behavior, right?
Yeah.
So as you increase the number of intents, as you generalize the space in which this is applicable, and given that human data is limited, try to anticipate a policy that works for in much larger number of cases. Like how difficult is the process of forming a damn good anchor policy?
Well, it really comes down to how much human data you have.
So it's all about scaling the data.
I think the more human data you have, the better, and I think that that's going to be a major bottleneck in scaling to more complicated domains. But that said, there might be the potential, just like in the language model where we leveraged, tons of data on the internet and then specialized it for diplomacy. There is potential that you can leverage huge amounts of data across the board, and then specialize it in the data set that you have for diplomacy. And that way, you're essentially augmenting the amount of data that you have.
To what degree does this apply to the real world diplomacy, the geopolitics? There's game theory has a history of being applied to understand and to give us hope about nuclear weapons, for example. The mutually assured destruction is a game theoretic concept that you can formulate. Some people say it's oversimplified, but nevertheless, here we are, and we somehow haven't blown ourselves up. Do you see a future where this kind of system can be used to help us make decisions, geopolitical decisions in the world?
Well, like I said, the original motivation for the game of diplomacy was the failures of World War I, the diplomatic failures that led to war. And the real take-home message of diplomacy is that, if people approach diplomacy the right way, then war is ultimately unsuccessful. The way that I see it, war is an inherently negative subject, right? There's always a better outcome than war for all the parties involved. And my hope is that, as AI progresses, then maybe this technology could be used to help people make better decisions across the board, and hopefully avoid negative outcomes like war.
Yeah, I just came back from Ukraine. I'm going back there on deep personal levels. Think a lot about how peace can be achieved, and I'm a big believer in conversation, leaders getting together and having conversations and trying to understand each other. Yeah, it's fascinating to think whether each one of those leaders can run a simulation ahead of time. Like if I'm an asshole, what are the possible consequences? If I'm nice, what are the possible consequences? My guess is that if the President of the United States got together with Volodymyr Zelensky and Vladimir Putin, that there would be significant benefits to the President of the United States not having the ego of kind of playing down and giving away a lot of chips for the future success of the world. So giving a lot of power to the two presidents of competing nations to achieve peace. That's my guess. It would be nice to run a bunch of simulations. But then you have to have team data, right? The game of diplomacy is fundamentally different than geopolitics. You need data. You need, I guess that's the question I have. How transferable is this to, any kind of negotiation, right? To any local, a bunch of lawyers, arguing, at a divorce, divorce lawyers. How transferable is this all kinds of human negotiation?
Well, I feel like this isn't a question that's unique to diplomacy. I think you look at RL breakthroughs, reinforcement learning breakthroughs in previous games as well, AI for StarCraft, AI for Atari. You haven't really seen it deployed in the real world because you have these problems of it's really hard to collect a lot of data, and you don't have a well-defined action space, you don't have a well-defined reward function. These are all things that you really need for reinforcement learning and planning to be really successful today. Now, there are some domains where you do have that. Code generation is one example. Theorem proving mathematics, that's another example where you have a well-defined action space, you have a well-defined reward function. And those are the kinds of domains where I can see RL in the short term being incredibly powerful. But yeah, I think that those are the barriers to deploying this at scale in the real world, but the hope is that in the long run we'll be able to get there.
Yeah, but diplomacy feels closer to the real world than does StarCraft. Because it's natural language. You're operating in the space of intent, in the space of natural language. That feels very close to the real world. And it also feels like you could get data on that from the internet.
Yeah, and that's why I do think that diplomacy is taking a big step closer to the real world than anything that's been before in terms of game AI. is the fact that we're communicating in natural language. We're leveraging the fact that we have this like general data set of dialogue and communication from the breadth of the internet. That is a big step in that direction. We're not 100% there, but we're getting close.
So if we actually return back to poker and chess, are some of the ideas that you're learning here with diplomacy, could you construct AI systems that play like humans, like make for a fun opponent in a game of chess?
Yeah, absolutely. We've already started looking into this direction a bit. So we tried to use the techniques that we've developed for diplomacy to make chess and Go AIs. What we found is that it led to much more human-like, strong chess and Go players. The way that AIs like Stockfish today play is in a very human style. It's very strong, but it's very different from how humans play. And so we can take the techniques that we developed for diplomacy, we do something similar in chess and Go, and we end up with a bot that's both strong and human. To elaborate on this a bit, like one way to approach making a human-like AI for chess is to collect a bunch of human games, like a bunch of human grandmaster games, and just do supervised learning on those games. But the problem is that if you do that, what you end up with is an AI that's substantially weaker than the human grandmasters that you trained on, because the neural net is not able to approximate the nuance of the strategy. This goes back to the planning thing that I mentioned, the search thing that I talked about before, that these human grandmasters when they're playing, they're using search and using planning, and the neural net alone, unless you have a massive neural net that's like 1,000 times bigger than what we have right now, it's not able to approximate those details very effectively. And on the other hand, you can leverage search and planning very heavily, but then what you end up with is an AI that plays in a very different style from how humans play. Now, if you strike this intermediate balance by setting the regularization parameters correctly, and say you can do planning but try to keep close to the human policy, then you end up with an AI that plays a very human-like style and a very strong style. And you can actually even tune it to have a certain elo. So you can say play in the style of 2,800 elo human.
Yeah, I wonder if you could do specific type of humans or categories of humans.
So
not just skill but style.
Yeah, I think so. And so this is where the research gets interesting. Like, one of the things that I was thinking about is, and this is actually already being done. I think there's a researcher at the University of Toronto that's working on this. Is to make an AI that plays in the style of a particular player. Like Magnus Carlsen, for example, you can make an AI that plays like Magnus Carlsen. And then where I think this gets interesting is like maybe you're up against Magnus Carlsen in the World Championship or something. You can play against this Magnus Carlsen bot to prepare against the real Magnus Carlsen, and you can try to explore strategies that he might struggle with, and try to figure out like how do you beat this player in particular. On the other hand, you can also have Magnus Carlsen working with this bot to try to figure out where he's weak and where he needs to improve his strategy. And so I can envision this future where data on specific chess and Go players becomes extremely valuable because you can use that to create specific models of how these particular players play.
So increasing the human-like behavior in bots, however, as you've mentioned, makes cheat detection much harder.
It does, yeah. The way that cheat detection works in a game like poker and a game like chess and Go, from what I understand, is trying to see like, is this person making moves that are very common among chess AIs or AIs in general, but very uncommon among top human players. And if you have the development of these AIs that play in a very strong style, but also a very human-like style, then that poses serious challenges for cheat detection.
And it makes you now ask yourself a hard question about what is the role of AI systems as they become more and more integrated in our society. And this kind of human AI integration has some deep ethical issues that we should be aware of. And also it's kind of cybersecurity challenge, right? To make, one of the assumptions we have when we play games is that there's a trust that it's only humans involved. And the better AI systems we create, which makes it super exciting. Human-like AI systems with different styles of humans is really exciting, but then we have to have the defenses better and better and better if we're to trust that we can enjoy human versus human game in a deeply fair way. It's fascinating. It's just it's humbling.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of like negative potential for this kind of technology, but at the same time, there's a lot of upside for it as well. So, for example, right now it's really hard to learn how to get better in games like chess and poker and Go because the way that the internet plays is so foreign and complex. But if you have these AIs that are playing, you can say like, oh, I'm a 2000 elo human. How do I get to 2200? Now you can have an AI that plays the style of the 2200 elo human, and that will help you get better. Or you mentioned this problem of like, how do you know that you're actually playing with humans, playing like online video games? Well, now we have the potential of populating these like virtual worlds with agents, like AI agents that are actually fun to play with, and you don't have to always be playing with other humans to have a fun time.
Don't kick me out.
So yeah, a lot of upside potential too, and I think with any sort of technology, there's the potential for a lot of greatness and a lot of downside as well.
So in the paper that I got a chance to look at, there's a section on ethical considerations. What's in that section? What are some ethical considerations here? Is it some of the stuff we already talked about?
There's some things that we've already talked about. I think specific to diplomacy, there's also the challenge that the game is. There is a deception aspect to the game, and so developing language models that are capable of deception is, I think, a dicey issue, and so
another world.
Makes research on diplomacy particularly challenging.
Where's my band?
And so those kinds of issues of like, should we even be developing AIs that are capable of lying to people? That's something that we have to, think carefully about.
I mean, that you have to do that kind of stuff in order to figure out where the ethical lines are. But I can see in the future it being illegal to have a consumer product that lies.
Yeah.
Like your personal assistant, AI assistant is always have to tell the truth. But if I ask it, did I get fatter over the past month? I sure as hell want that AI system to lie to me. So there's a trade-off between lying and being nice. We have to somehow find. Where's the ethics in that? And we're back to the discussions inside relationships. Anyway, what were you saying?
Oh, I was saying, like, that's kind of going to the question of what is a lie? Is it a white lie, a bad lie, is it a little lie? Those kinds of questions.
Neon.
Boy, we return time and time again to deep human questions as we design AI systems. That's exactly what they do. They put a mirror to humanity to help us understand ourselves.
There's also the issue of, in these diplomacy experiments, in order to do a fair comparison, what we found is that there's an inherent anti-bias in these kinds of games. So we actually played tournaments in a non-language version of the game where we told the participants, like, hey, in every single game there's going to be an AI. And what we found is that humans would spend basically the entire game trying to figure out who the bot was, and then as soon as they thought they figured it out, they would all team up and try to kill it. And overcoming that inherent anti-AI bias is a challenge.
On the flip side, I think when robots become the enemy, that's when we get to heal our human divisions, and we can become one. As long as we have one enemy, it's that Reagan thing when the aliens show up. That's when we put aside our divisions and become one human species.
We might have our differences, but we're at least all human.
At least we all hate the robots. No. I think there will be actually in the future something like a civil rights movement for robots. I think that's the fascinating thing about AI systems, and they force us to ask ethical questions about what is sentience, what is how do we feel about systems that are capable of suffering or capable of displaying suffering, and how do we design products that show emotion and not. How do we feel about that? Lying is another topic. Are we going to allow bots to lie and not? And where's the balance between being nice and telling the truth? I mean, these are all fascinating questions. It's like so exciting to be in a century when we create systems that take these philosophical questions that have been asked for centuries, and now we can engineer them inside systems where you really have to answer that, because you'll have transformational impact on human society depending on what you design inside those systems. It's fascinating. And like you said, I feel like diplomacy is a step towards the direction of the real world, applying these IRL methods towards the real world. From all the breakthrough performances in Go and chess and StarCraft and Dota, this feels like the real world. Especially now our mind's been on war and military conflict. This feels like it can give us some deep insights about human behavior at the large geopolitical scale. What do you think is the breakthrough or the directions of work that will take us towards solving intelligence, towards creating AGI systems? You've been a part of creating, by the way, we should say part of great teams that do this, of creating systems that achieve breakthrough performances on before thought unsolvable problems like poker, multiplayer poker, diplomacy.
That's your chick.
We're taking steps towards that direction.
That's your, you chose
to create superhuman level intelligence.
You know, there's a lot of people trying to figure that out right
You
now.
chose
and
that
you know, I should
bitch
say that the amount of
over
progress that's been made, especially in the past few years. Is
Marjorie.
I mean, you look at
Dog,
where AI
Marjorie
was
is 10,000
10
times
years
better
ago,
looking than
and
this
the
girl.
idea that you could have AI
Sorry, lady.
generate language.
Marjorie
and
is
today,
fucking
and
so
able
much
to play
hotter
a
than
game
you
like
are.
diplomacy was just
Oh, your
like
roots are a
unthinkable.
fucking mess, girl.
Even
Oh
5
man,
years
your
ago,
life
10
went
years
to
ago.
shit. Marjorie is gorgeous.
Now there are aspects of AI that I think are still lacking. I think there's general agreement that one of the major
Somebody
issues with
say,
AI today is that it's
where
very
is Marjorie?
it requires a huge number of samples of training examples to be able to train. You know, you look at an AI that plays Go, and it needs millions of games of Go to play the game well. Whereas a human can pick it up, like, you know, I don't know, how many games does a human Go player, Go grandmaster play in their lifetime? Probably, you know, in the thousands or tens of thousands, I guess. So that's one issue, overcoming this challenge of data efficiency. And this is particularly important if you want to deploy AI systems in real-world settings where they're interacting with humans. Because, you know, for example, with robotics, it's really hard to generate a huge number of samples. It's a different story when you're working in these, you know, totally virtual games where you can play many games and it's no big deal.
I was planning on just launching like 1,000 of these robots in Austin.
I hate assholes who say, I just spit out my coffee. Dude, shut the fuck up. No one gives a shit.
Data.
That's not
Like,
a
what's
crazy
the worst that could happen?
Yeah. I mean, that's one way to overcome the data efficiency problem.
Yeah.
Is like scale. Yeah.
Like
Just not that funny. And if you're not, you don't know how to fucking laugh.
Operating
dumbasses.
In the
They're the worst. Assholes, online kids. I'm telling you, the thing that fucking, you know what really grinds my gears? Loser douches who are like, fuck you, okay? Fuck you.
So what are the ideas of becoming more data?
I mean, that's the $1 trillion question.
Fucking
in AI today.
doofus.
If you can figure out how to make AI systems
Just the
more
worst.
data efficient, then that's.
Oh, I think it's really funny.
So
Dog, shut the fuck up. That's what I think is funny. How about you kiss fucking Ashkenaz ass, dog? I gotta take a well, actually I did. Did I tell you about it? It was like started off with like a push, and moved quickly into like a 6,
can go quite a long way.
and then
that, you know, I think there's some truth
immediately
to it. When you
turned
look
into
at the way
1,
humans
1, 2,
approach,
1, 2, 1, 2.
A game like poker,
And then it was done, and it was like, oh man, I feel so much better.
Background knowledge about,
And what about
you know,
vomit?
how
You haven't
how
done vomit.
works, the idea of money. So
You haven't
they're
fucking
able to leverage that kind of
experienced
information
vomit.
to pick up the game faster. So it's not
What's
really
the
a fair
worst?
comparison to then compare
Corn.
to yeah, that's the money from scratch.
Why?
Maybe one of the ways
It's
to address
the
this
worst scene.
sample complexity
Corn
problem
all over
is
the place.
by allowing it to
Why?
leverage that
It doesn't
general knowledge
digest.
across a ton of different domains.
Sometimes. Anyway,
so, like I said, you did
disgusting.
a lot of incredible work.
What's the
Research
thickest?
and actually
Yeah,
building
rub it
systems.
back.
What advice?
What's the
would you give
thickest
to,
thing you've ever
start-
vomited, Rabbi?
What advice would you
I
give
don't
to
know.
beginners interested in machine learning? Just their
Thickest?
start.
I have never
high school,
vomited like
college,
steak.
Thinking like this. Seems
I'll
like
let
a
you
fascinating
steak.
world.
Oh,
What advice
actually,
would you give?
Beef
I would
jerky.
say that
Beef
there are a
jerky,
lot
and
of
because of
people
Zuckerberg, it's
working
not on
on
camera.
similar
But
aspects of machine
yeah,
learning,
this one,
and to not be
it's
afraid
on,
to try
it's on
something.
this. I ate like 3 bags of
My
beef
own
jerky
path
and fucking
in
vomited
AI
all
is
over
pretty atypical for
the
machine
toilet.
learning
I was
researchers.
able to make it
I mean,
there.
I started out
Beef
working
jerky's the
on
worst
game
vomit
theory
you've ever had?
and then shifting more.
I don't know
towards
if it's the worst, it was the thickest.
and that actually had
The
a lot of
worst
benefits. I think, because it
was the
allowed me to
fucking
look
wine
at these
powered,
problems in a very
wine
different
centric.
way, the way a lot
Really?
of
Actually, no, I
machine
didn't
learning
vomit that
researchers
time.
view it.
My roommate
That
vomited, but
comes
I did
with
not.
drawbacks.
That was just the worst
Especially, like, there's
hangover.
definitely aspects
The
of
worst
machine learning
vomiting I've
where,
ever
you know,
done.
I'm weaker than most
I was
of
in
the
Las
researchers out there,
Vegas.
but I
Fucking,
think that diversity of
that was
perspective,
bad.
when I'm working with my teammates, there's
I
something I
vomited
bring
in
to
a
the table,
sink.
something they're bringing to the table, and that kind of collaboration. is very
Where
fruitful
else
for
have
that.
you vomited?
So there could be
I'm a
problems
big vomiter. Well,
like poker, like you've chosen
oh,
to
there's
there can be
I was
problems like
eating a
that
bunch of
out there
cheese
that you could just
and I
tackle.
fucking vomited
It's extremely
outside the
difficult.
7-Eleven in Tustin all over
I
it.
think
It's
there's
on
a lot of
camera.
challenges
That
with
one's
I think
definitely
having
on
a
camera.
diversity of viewpoints and
That was
backgrounds is
awesome.
really helpful for working together to
And
figure out how to tackle those kinds of challenges.
So
is that the
as a
only kind,
beginner,
only
so
other
that
kind of
I
vomiting
would say
you've ever done?
that's more for like a grassroots where they already it's like a complete
That was
beginner. It's a
basically,
good journey. So for you, that was doing more on the math side of things, doing game theory,
yeah.
all that good. So
How about
it's
the worst?
basically build up a foundation.
Allegedly, it would have been the
So
fucking
programming, mathematics,
eggnog shit.
even
She went
physics,
through me like
but
a shit,
build
like
that
shit
foundation.
morning.
Yeah, I would say a strong
And dog
foundation in
ate it.
math and computer science and statistics.
I saw it. I was on my way
But don't
back
be
from
afraid to try something that's different. Learn something
Shabbat
that's
dinner.
different from, you know,
And then the next
thing
morning,
that everybody else is doing to get
on my
attention.
way to shul,
You know, there's
dog
value
had eaten all my
in
poop.
having a different
Well, it was more
background
like,
than everybody else.
should have been multiple
so-
dogs. And it was more like,
But certainly having a strong math
diarrhea.
background, especially in things like linear algebra
Anyway.
and statistics and probability,
at the end of your
are
fucking
incredibly
story,
helpful today for learning
dog,
about
I can't believe I fucking got
understanding
banned
machine
so
learning.
fucking much. For no reason.
Since you're taking steps
Why?
locally to diplomacy,
I don't
they
know.
will be
You're
able to,
advertising. Dog, people
figure
having
out
names
how
as
to live
advertising. Who
out.
gives a shit?
Well, what is it? Like in poker and diplomacy, you need a value function. You need to have a reward
I don't
system.
understand it. It's
what
not
does it
even
mean?
like the fucking website has
So,
advertising.
okay. So then you can exactly
What?
lay down a
Dumb.
reward function. Being like,
This
I
shit
want to be
sucks. And on
like,
top of that, I got this fucking
I want to be in a happy relationship. And then he'll say, well,
ban from Google, you cunt.
You know, there's a
Sundar,
lot
you
of
douche.
talk today about in AI safety circles.
The layaway just went live. Dog, I don't fucking care.
You say
The layaway and Big E are the only fucking people who I get about whom I get fucking messages. This is the worst.
And so you want to, is that really
Who's
what you want?
this?
Is your objective really to be rich at all
A Luca.
costs, or is it more nuanced than that?
so yeah, and the consequences. Yeah. So that
Long time.
like,
I wish I could do a fucking Eastern European
minimize the unintended
accent.
consequences.
Why?
Then it is
I like
about the
accents.
actual policy that
Can you
gets
do a Western European
maybe
accent?
life is just about
No.
constantly updating.
I'm
your
European,
reward function.
and I can't do fucking European
I
accents.
think
Really?
the challenge in life is
I should be able to
figuring
do
out
it
exactly
with
what that reward
a
function
PCI.
is. Sometimes
No.
it's pretty hard to specify. The same
My
way that,
grandparents didn't
you know,
speak
trying to
the accent.
handcraft the alcohol policy in a game like
They were
chess
both
is really
born in the
difficult.
good old US of
It's
A.
not so clear.
Because they kick ass and take names.
for life.
I think one day,
Did they have any accent?
and I wonder what that would be. Until then,
None?
I just really appreciate the kind of work you're doing. It's
Really?
really fascinating taking a leap into a more world like
All right, well,
problem
this shit
space
sucks.
and just achieving incredible results by applying reinforcement learning. Though, since I saw you work on poker,
Mo finally accepted my fucking friend
to
request.
talk to you, and this is
Amazing.
Thanks for listening to this conversation. Support
I
this
love
podcast.
Mo.
Please check out our sponsors.
Mo is
in the
amazing.
description. Now,
Really? Yeah,
let
that
me
person
leave
is
you with
always
some
in the
words
fucking
from Sun Tzu in the Art of War. The whole
karaoke
secret
stream.
lies in confusing the enemy.
What are the
That
fucking
cannot
airbenders?
fathom our real intent.
I don't know. Is that
Thank you for
fucking
listening.
mod?
Hope to see you
Manga?
next time.
What is manga? I don't know. Some Japanese shit.
What's Speed Racer? I think that's anime. I get hentai and manga.
In my mind, I have to have everybody else. Winning is not enough.
The following is a conversation with Haji Gracie, widely considered to be the greatest jiu-jitsu competitor of all time. This is the Lex Video Podcast. Support it. Please check out our sponsors in the description. And now, dear friends, here's Haji Gracie. Let's start with possibly the greatest match in jiu-jitsu history. Here
Rabbi Rothschild versus Van.
Let's go through the details. Let's go through
Really?
the whole thing. So he walked.
Ain't even close.
You always do this walk. It's an epic walk. Post that on Instagram.
Really?
Henzo posted that on Instagram.
Done.
Yeah.
This
is
calm
the
walk towards the mat.
I would
Let's
ban me if
go
I
to
were
that.
I would be like,
Match
dude, you're not
particular was
studying
going
anything.
through
What are
your
you
mind.
studying?
You're gonna win
Fucking
for competition.
Yiddish
Facing up
jujitsu? Fuck you.
one
Get
of
out.
the greatest. And at that time,
These people, I'd be like, get the fuck out of here, too.
competitor
Korea
of all time,
doesn't win you.
Patricia.
Go to KBBQ if you
Here's
want.
the old man.
Those
the
people,
old timer, getting
some
back out
crazy ass
there.
chat
What were you thinking?
about which I
Yeah,
don't like
I
to name.
think
The
that's
other thing,
First time.
I don't even know what that is. Everybody comes in like, hey, do you play fucking Minecraft?
Fight.
No, dog. I'm fucking
Like a lot of
cool.
people saw. Consider him the favorite. I mean, understand. He's for a while. He was just winning everything. So, you know, it's about the walk. Like for me,
Shout out to that
fights
Lana
way before
girl.
the referee.
She's
Yeah.
tight.
It's all the focus and concentration that I think is very important for you to start before. Like in I almost walk
Ego
blind
World.
to the net. Many times I pass you like great friends.
Rate my album. Girls Only.
Trying to talk to you and I'm like 100% focused on my.
If you share my song, I'll give you Nitro. Send me
So I think that's
ass and
always
DMs.
very
Huh?
important to try to
Rate
clear
this.
my mind out from.
So this person literally
Hey,
just fucking is promoting their fucking album.
Like a calm river.
That's cool. I don't understand why that's a big deal. Notice I'm not fucking flagging. I'm like, hey everybody, I'm a douche, and I need everybody to know how much I'm a douche.
How hard is it to achieve that point?
I am.
It's difficult to say because
This is
I think I don't remember when I'll say as a black belt, I try to focus like that.
Yo, dog.
Because it's probably
This shit
something to learn.
sucks.
The more you think, the more nervous you get.
Chill Zone
And
appeals.
there's nothing that you're gonna gain by thinking.
Yo, when am I gonna get this shit back?
In a way, you can do what can go wrong, what can go right, because it's unpredictable. You have absolutely no idea. It's impossible to predict the fight.
And you discover
League
that
of Legends.
if you just let those nervous
No one
feelings go
cares.
and empty your mind, it actually is pretty effective.
Is this it? Is this done?
You know, you kind of
This is the worst fucking stream of all time, no doubt.
So it helps you know, focus in the fight.
I've learned that
All right.
jiu-jitsu and in general in life, that whenever something feels really shitty, you can just like take that thought and think about it. Like I do that like a long run, like a fast run, or the jiu-jitsu, especially like
Lay away.
shape, like that feeling of exhaustion. But you can always get to the feeling of exhaustion. You can just think about it, not think about it.
This bitch is coughing up a
And that's
storm.
a lot.
Are you a Jets
I
fan?
think maybe in the face of exhaustion,
She is.
start to creep in. Maybe
Interesting.
your muscles tighten up. I don't know. This is for the amateur.
Who's the hottest bitch on?
But it's kind of funny. You
Just
take
chatting
that
right now.
thought as gold. So you get a
Good
black belt
question, kids.
competitor, you get used to. You get good at letting
Look,
go.
I should get into one of these
When
motherfuckers.
it makes
Shit.
you exhaustion,
Kick clips.
that's one of the
This guy was gonna interview me. He
you know,
sucks.
there's a lot of times in this fight, you get tired and you get pretty tired. So it's like the last thing you want to think
Really?
about
Yeah,
is how
dog.
tired
He
you
was
are.
supposed to fucking
It
interview
doesn't
me,
matter
and then
because
he
it
ripped on me.
What do you
Fuck
mean?
you, dude.
I mean,
Really?
yeah, it
He
doesn't
kept
matter.
on me.
Yes,
I don't know.
It's, yeah, there's no value thinking about it. There's no
This
value.
is the
You just have
worst.
to do it.
So when you're like
Mark off the
when
perk.
you're
She's the hottest
and you're
because she's really nice.
slowly moving, as you sometimes do, tying your belt, catching your breath, you're not thinking about anything. You're trying to let go
Yeah.
of thinking.
I'm trying to save everything to the fight.
All right,
Like,
girl.
nothing is to waste.
Use it on my face, baby.
Move
Really? No,
unnecessarily.
calm down, woman.
It's just gonna
Would you
make
let her
you
go
tired
piss
or
on
it's
your
gonna take
face?
Something out of it. Like I try to calculate every single movement.
Yeah, I know whose question that was. Fucking rabbits in the back with creepy bitch.
100% in the fight with no way, especially
and that's the thing, true.
Number one and number two, and we're gonna get into the whole,
You're not like explicitly thinking.
all in.
Just
Shit.
don't move.
All right. Would I let a girl? If I were in a kiddie pool and I had a poncho and my eyes were protected with like double dare goggles, yeah, and I had a snorkel, you let a bitch pee on your face? If that got her off, I am about getting bitches off, baby. You would let a chick piss on your face? Yeah, I mean, how's it gonna fucking work? Do I have to, can I sit in a chair or do I have to be on? Okay. If I'm in a kiddie pool, on a
super quickly. So
unlike
so the moment it's not
a milking stool, it's not like too tall. And then I've got a snorkel, those fucking double dare goggles, poncho. I need galoshes. I mean, if she wanted to take a whiz on me, yeah, I guess she could stand on like chairs like this. I mean, she just doesn't have the same aim nor accuracy nor distance that I do. Would you piss on a bitch's face? If that goes. But that's not my thing.
But even just
why? Because I fire ropes on that bitch before I'm gonna whiz on her. Anyway.
Yeah, it's not that.
Calm down, woman. All right. Is that the end of your fucking story?
You see that there's nothing beautiful than like a.
Would you take? Would you take a dump on a car? The Olympics. like fucking mineral oil and shit. All right, how would we do that one?
One man's life flashed before his eyes. Like I'm supposed to be the top 3 person in the world. Did I just?
But do you ever see one of those old like medieval castles that have like the toilet that goes out the side, and they'd always have to protect that because guys would go up there and like kill guys on taking a shit? Well, if I were in one of those castle things and it was going down, just free falling.
Do you get that at all?
I don't fucking know what's going on down there. So
because
if
of
you want to fucking mud it up, go for it.
System,
some bitch would be like, "Dibs on the moat." Calm down, woman.
Has these moments where everything just turns into a single moment. Do you have that?
All right, is that the end of your story?
Is you get like 2 points.
So
it's because I think we got the mission is not just precise.
Would you let a girl shit on your face?
Judo is the takedown that counts as.
Well, do I get a kid?
Fight over.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu don't have that.
Okay, and a poncho.
So
yeah.
You score points. Well, I think in terms of submission.
I mean, she's really gonna get off on this. I'm not just gonna do it. She's like, I'm almost there. No, she's got to be like, no. Once this thing leaves my ass, I am orgasming from now.
Okay, let's go back to that guy with his mind.
Oh, well, okay. Then maybe in that case.
In the day,
do I get a snorkel and double dare glasses?
Is there some fear leading up?
And nothing goes in the snorkel either. I don't want to be sucking in your turds.
You bitch. Everybody feels something, The fear is there, but how much?
You let a girl shit on your face?
I think I was a lot more confident than fearful.
It's not about me. Does it get her up? If it does, then yeah.
I was pretty confident that it could be.
Why?
What was the source of that?
I don't know. As long as it's not making a mess, I got a kidding pool, right? Can you hose me down when I'm done?
You can take anyone.
I think I could.
Specific strategic.
Is it like a tarp?
Like talking about her.
Wrap myself in a tarp or a poncho or something?
Like, or rather.
And double their glasses and the fucking.
Is through data.
Snorkel?
Like that you have proven yourself.
Would you really let it go? Yeah, I think I would.
In previous situations.
If it gets her off, if that's her thing, and like,
you don't have much data.
I'd be like, bitch, can't I just pitch it to death? No, I gotta fucking can't figure it out, can't pitch it to death. This is the only way that she could ever get off is by shitting on my face.
Doesn't that creep in? Like that doubt? You don't have enough data.
I get the double dare glasses and the fucking snorkel. I get to wear a poncho and galoshes and fucking.
Okay, if I never had
the kiddie pool,
somebody walking to fight someone like that, then would I be that
Yeah, I mean, what's it gonna
probably not.
fucking hit my cheek?
So
It's like,
that
oh, okay.
history of what would be the way what achieving those gives you confidence. If it
From her cheeks to my cheek.
I
Oh,
wouldn't- I
oh,
wouldn't
that's
be that
disgusting.
But the time
Anyway,
off
you would really? How about would you let her go diarrhea on your face?
doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of all runs together. No
You don't have the fear or the actual physical experience.
So long as it
the
stays out of the
psychological
fucking
experience
snorkel.
of being rusty, of being on it.
And the double dare glasses have to be like water. I don't want the ones.
Did you increase the intensity of the
Okay,
training?
is that it? Is that the end of your story?
Yeah, I train normal. Let's say compared to the first fight, but the second was a lot more because like I said, the training for the first fight.
Is there anything else?
So,
Would you?
I think I was.
Would you use your finger to fuck a girl during her period? If there's she's out of tampons and there aren't fucking, there's no cotton in the country. Yeah, I thought it'd take a trigger. You want me to thumb you, girl? You want a trigger finger? You want a middle finger? You want a middle finger? You want pinky? You want a pinky action? I'm just here to help you. No one gives a shit.
No points.
This is the worst stream ever.
People don't know it's a 20-minute match. Submission only. So do it only by submission, otherwise it's a draw.
So physically, I was an exceptional fight.
Doug, I like those guys.
My body was
This motherfucker's the best fucking fighter. I think I whooped his ass.
I was confident enough that I wouldn't get tapped
Why?
out from the first. That I was still gonna fight because he has to tap me.
Really think you could beat him?
And I trust on my defense. I'm confident enough.
Really? I'd whoop his fucking ass.
But
Why?
in terms of
Why not? I'd be like,
walking
dog,
to the second
let me
fight,
win.
I
Come on,
was
dude.
a lot.
I'm sick as fuck.
What can you say about that feeling when something's not right?
This is the worst.
It's weird. Like people brag, they give up. This is
What the fuck is going on with this shit?
because it's
Fucking
like
bullshit.
really tight. It's the same thing.
This is the
A lot of
worst.
people try because
This
they
is the
just feel
worst.
they cannot give it.
You had a chick say that she loved your
So
body.
they just
I think this woman is blind.
So what do you do?
Yo, dog, this is the worst.
there's no giving up.
The worst stream ever in the history of mankind. People will watch this in the future and be like, this is the most boring shit of all time. 5785 is so shitty. Like, dog, you're telling me. What is this bullshit, motherfucker?
Especially in training. Like I get I've never
Yo, dog,
hurt myself. I get you get angry.
this is the worst.
Train hard. Improve.
No reason to have psych,
You
bitch.
go call. Accept that you made a
Dude, I might have to take another
Give up.
dump.
tap and try harder. So not tapping, you're sacrificing your body. You'll never be the same. Like if you that you ever.
This is the worst.
Ever be the same.
Let me sing a song.
You
You
let
guys
yourself
ready?
go to sleep,
The song goes
you'll
like this.
resist.
This is the worst
There's a limit of resistance. So they
shit I have ever known.
the moment
I'm
you-
on
you-
3
you go to
fucking
sleep,
streams. No one
this
is watching. 4 fucking
according to
streams.
That's
8, just here, 8 fucking streams. No one is
It's the
watching
same way you get knocked
any
out.
of
You get
this.
knocked out the first time,
I
you
am
resist
fucking
yourself. You drop
blinded
your weak this week.
by the fucking ear light.
Right.
Yo, dog.
It's pretty good.
It sucks.
I don't know about that. No.
What the fuck?
Because it doesn't make sense to me. Or maybe
Did you know? Because the
in my
compass
case,
in your
my
server
understanding of where I'm screwed is
That's
pretty
true.
good. Yeah. Like,
Oh,
there's
this
no.
shit
Yeah. One of the.
Oh, what the fuck?
About my jiu-jitsu journey is not having
You're the worst.
given enough time
This is, oh, dude, it
of
works.
being in really bad positions. Like the better I got, I think the less I started being in
Look
bad
at this
positions,
move.
which is
You all ready for this?
It's likely that is how you train. Yeah. Because you used to just spar. When you spar, like it's difficult to be
Yo, this is the
in bad
worst.
positions a lot of times. You train with better people, but
Boxford,
let's say 5,
no
6 in a
one
row,
on
how
earth
long
knows
you
what
never
the
in
fuck that
position,
is.
how
Is that a
long, but
fucking
you don't
current?
have time to develop.
Is that Minecraft?
That's why people they don't.
No one knows.
They don't train.
What's this?
They have just
Blocks
over
for
and
trading.
to be used.
Yeah, or put yourself there. I just
Yo,
didn't have
bitch.
that mindset. I think you start.
This is the
being part of
worst.
fun.
My fucking fantasy football team is so bad.
You have puzzles that you figured out. That you're playing.
Riker sucks.
Specific details.
He was he's the best kicker in the history of the NFL, and
like
he sucks.
techniques and so on. But yeah, just the percentage of time you spend being submitted or trying, even going against like lower ranks.
Yo, quit sucking dick.
Slow. I don't
He
know
was
if that's
supposed to
for
be
most
the
people,
number one
probably
kicker.
Most people have
Worse.
Yeah, because they don't allow themselves to be there.
Terrible.
I mean, who wants to get out?
Just
Because
absolute
you
dog shit.
until you get work on it, and of course you can get tapped, or you don't want to skate, you're gonna struggle to skate.
All right,
So they don't want to be there.
let's change it up.
I regret it most.
Let's go to bitches and
because
pools and
the
shit.
fact it clearly had
Team fight tactics. What the fuck is that?
it was clear that our competition was
Dude, show me.
constituted by conservative
Dude,
like don't take risks.
creative.
I think because of defense,
Top live
honestly.
categories.
And I think
What
a
girl
lot of
is
any
at
of the
6:35 in the morning
like
in a
for
fucking
example, exhaustion was accompanied by fear because of
prime time, dog?
I think. If I were to psychoanalyze myself, and
Old school RuneScape, Age of Empires 2. Who the fuck is still playing this game?
Speaking of which,
Dog.
I don't think he was ever submitted you in competition. So you're
What was
yes, it's you are a young person. That's still funny.
no, it's
FIFA only has 24,
by and large. I mean,
16 people watching it.
or something like that. But I was like, I was remembering. And I did.
Dude, what happened to bitches and pools? Block channel. Did I block channels or something?
He never completed it.
No block channels. Channel? I have 4 people watching me.
Let's do a
Or
podcast.
my
I know
friends.
What do
Layaway.
you attribute that to? You were saying
That's nice.
you were confident that
Yo,
the
dog.
top of the world, the
What's
one
it called?
Uchesha would not submit.
Hot tubs?
So where is that confidence grounded? What do you attribute the fact that we was able to submit you?
First, he comes on training. I train a lot. But
What's it called?
my
Bikini?
defense is good because I practice
I
over
don't
and
know.
over
I think we got
That's
rid
how
of this
much as I
shit.
practice all my offensive
knows?
position. So it's, you have to train both people, not just be in a good position, you have to be in bad. So I think
Not a
that's the
single
first
fucking
part of
Korean
my
came to
game.
see me.
I
Asses.
need to be a complete fighter. It's a complete martial artist.
Really?
You have to be good in every single position. Every single one. You have a weakness. So it's to be complete.
Anybody else ban me?
So that's always my, I was always very
Dog, this is
strict
the
on that.
worst.
Like it's where my weakness, where I don't feel good at. If you put me in a position where struggle, help us get out.
I'm in one of them.
Any submission lock, penny position, back down, everything. It doesn't matter which position I practice over and over again. So if I get
Low
there in
five.
a fight situation, I will know how to get out. At least I'll have a
Dude,
direction.
let me back in that
I will
fucking
know this is
Discord.
my way out.
Do you practice both escaping the bad position and the transition into the bad position, avoiding it? Because that's how it happens. Jiu-jitsu, you start in a neutral position.
No, the transition then becomes a fight itself. It's being there. It's when you're there. Then you have to know how to get out. That's your weakness. Either stopping the person getting that difference. The two differences.
TikTok zone.
Practice with the other.
No.
So, but both are important, I guess. But the stopping the person is easier to practice because that comes naturally in training. What was the actual process? Like, what was your biggest weakness throughout your, like, you just remembering what was annoying to you to figure out?
Side control is always a lot of what's it's
TikTok sucks so much fucking cock. It's fucking real. Hey, why don't you just ban me?
It's so annoying.
Douche.
It makes no sense.
Someone feeds you down. Someone March is a big and strong guy. Regardless of who, it's not going to be to escape. So some situations are just hard.
That must be the. Sorry to interrupt. I'm interrupting Roger Grace. You just need to realize if you're going against a perfect jiu-jitsu competitor.
What the fuck is this?
One of the hardest positions. Is it the hardest position to escape?
Is one if the person doesn't want to progress, right? Concern about all the
like the best hitters in the world. I mean, partially because I've just seen judo that know how to hit. They
yes, I control is a nightmare. It's a nightmare. Doesn't matter how much you practice.
Yeah,
it's a nightmare.
And it's also just frustrating. Yeah. I guess it is also frustrating because a lot of people
monetization
will be about maintaining control, not progressing.
55% more
And
subscribers.
usually people in their mouth back and forth are usually
Oh,
trying
I hate
to
these people. I
progress
hate
from
this fucking
submission,
shit.
which opens up opportunities to
Dog.
escape. So what's the actual process?
Trick shot. This guy's tight as fuck.
Just time and
Love
time
this
again,
shit.
putting yourself inside the bottom of the yeah. Over
I could do this shit all fucking day.
Back, get back, mount, get back. Any situation outside that, stop start again. And it has to be, I'll say 5 minutes, because it's the repetition that will teach you. You know, if you train like 2 minutes, you have time to, watch and then time out. It's the repetition that over and over again. Try to think over and over again. Then you see what you go wrong.
And is it understanding the details of the movement or actually doing
Make it.
getting it?
Make it. Just make it through the thing once.
But most important thing is to escape from the second.
Baller.
He's attacking. The one thing is not trying to see it, I say the person is very good, has a very good attack. The first thing is defense, not just can export yourself or even worse position. Because that is very risky.
How does it know how many attempts?
So avoiding that.
Oh, here you go, dog.
Versus defense, not getting caught.
Dude, that one's got to be adjusted.
Don't be in a worse position.
The defense, jiu-jitsu when you're wearing, what is defense entail? Is it mostly the position of your hips and legs?
I gotta just watch all trick shots now. This is fucking phenomenal. I've seen him do this one together. Oh no, I haven't.
Going back to find that guy, so confident, no fear. Is there a bit of?
I love this shit so fucking much. It makes me want to scream.
I'm fearless. Of course, there's concerns. That fight, I would have to say, was probably the fight that I was nervous most walking, because I knew what that meant. That fight. I mean, everything, all my legacy was on the line, because if I lost this fight, I would forever be.
That was tight as fuck.
And I mean, Bushishi is a great guy, great competitor. Jiu-Jitsu is very good, but I'm better than him. I knew that. It's like
he's eating nonstop at that point.
He's a great competitor. He's not taking nothing out of it. He's super tough, very, very tough, very good. He's probably the best competitor Jiu-Jitsu has had. 13 times world championship. I want to. So, as a competitor, he gets more tired than I do. So, but in terms of analyze the game, I consider that.
Oh, that was amazing.
So, knowing all that, everything that I do, all my legacy, it's if I lose fighting match,
amazing.
If I lose this fight, I'm forever with you. I remember that is fine. I knew, not at that moment. I already knew that. I remember just before, the first moment, I'm standing and everybody called my name.
This guy is wonderful.
I mean, my legs were like, I feel the adrenaline kicking on my legs, and I'm like, I'm hitting the leg, I'm like, wake up, get up, get the adrenaline off, So it was intense. It was intense.
And this was
that was it. So my hometown.
So this is, you know, Rio is not exactly known for its calmness in its fan. So this is like
I could fucking watch this shit all fucking day.
the year before. Yeah. This is like, I mean, this like the whole basically.
Oh, if he would have got it, that would
martial
shit
arts
myself.
community is watching.
I think I'm better than
So,
yeah. And
so
fuck yeah.
people are just. I mean, there's attention. It's also.
This is the
I
worst.
mean, I don't know if you felt that in part.
Community
But you're also fighting for grace and hate.
Dog, shut the fuck up. No one gives a shit.
In our hometown, the greatest giver is
Gracie.
Hey, I own.
Arguably.
Are you impersonating the
I
owner?
mean, okay.
Are you impersonating the owner? Are you
friends, everybody
impersonating?
There was a lot of pressure. A lot.
So, and then, were you thinking that you were able to submit him?
No, it's at that point, like I don't predict how the fight will go. That I never did because it's unpredictable. I never try to set any strategy for anything. I think, okay, that I did, but that was the only time that I set any strategy into a fight. It was a 15-minute fight then. And I said, first 5 minutes, I'm going to play defense. He's bigger, stronger, younger. I don't want to play his game. And I know he comes in very fast. Every single fight he had, he becomes very aggressive. So my strategy going into the fight is say 5 minutes, I'm going to play defense. I'm not going to try to attack. I'm not going to try to match his pace. I already expected, maybe they're going to start losing the fight because, if he comes in, there's a risk of him maybe getting taken down and if something happens. I'm like, I'm going to stick to the game plan. 5 minutes, I'm going to start picking up the pace because it's 10 minutes to go. It's 10 minutes to fight. So I don't need to start fast, but I'm going to start being more aggressive and then, try to take him down off the guard. But by then, I'm like, that's not the strategy.
There's no specific stay in the feet. Were you comfortable being on bottom and top in this?
Yeah.
Strategic
Yeah, I was comfortable bottom top. I prefer to be on top because being in the bottom, the person on top dictates the fight because he's on top over you. So I always prefer to be on top because I can dictate it. I can implement my own pace. And being the bottom, they can slow me down. So it's harder. So if I choose, I'll go on top. But I think by then it's like, 5 minutes, hit it. He's pretty big. So I'm going to spend a lot of energy taking him down. I forgot.
How did to hear you're stepping in? By the way, Puzzle Mass is old school as it gets. So caller last year for people just listening or watching the early minutes of the match. So just feeling it out. He seems pretty calm too. He must be interesting. I wonder how you guys are friends.
Yeah.
Did he ever say how nervous he was?
No, never spoke about that.
No. He probably is late at night thinking about it.
I don't know.
That has something.
Yeah. I mean, so you see the first 5 years, he can't. I knew what he was going to do. I studied his game. His stand-up is most basic. His basic takedowns, leg attacks, double legs, so he was single double, and he charged in. That is pretty much his stand-up game.
You were trying to get a grip.
Yeah, that we got penalized.
Did you like to use do you like to post left? You have a right forward usually. You're right.
I'm righty, but I know he was my leg. So I'm playing my stance just because of his game. All my grips at the first 5 minutes was to kind of try to neutralize his attacks.
So he wants to get you left right now. Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
So how hard is that to stop that?
I mean, he felt pretty strong. Some, pushing the head down, trying to play with his balance.
Yeah. Wow.
If you see it, there was a pause. Go back there. He charged it. There's a pause. He's standing in front of him.
Yeah.
I did that on purpose.
What do you mean?
Just mess hard of him. Because, he tried. And I'm like, he failed.
I mean, there's a okay. So you can feel frustration.
I could feel his frustration not be able to take me down.
Okay. So now, and this is just like a lot
Damn.
of battles.
You're walking straight into the middle of the man, and he's like, see, I'm going for a slow recovery.
And he's computing all this shit.
Yeah,
Okay.
because he just tried to take you down. He needs to recover, and I mean, you need to recover. The guys now ready for you.
And do I go for another takedown? Because this one failed.
Yeah.
Do I need to recalculate the strategy?
Yeah, and he kept trying over and over again and failing. I think that frustrating a lot. But I felt
Terry Gard, I've
kind
always
of
thought
slowing down
was
slowly because he was
Shut
getting
up, that bitch, you're dying.
So we're 5 minutes. Yeah, he keeps. So you never got that takedown.
no.
Let's see. So at this point, do you pull guard? Yeah.
So that's when I felt like he's mentally he's worried enough.
Did you try to pull closer?
No, I knew he's gonna bring that in.
That sucks.
Because that's the defense
I
against
bet
pulling
people
close
look
guard.
like it. I think it
But I
was.
like that.
What else?
I like people bringing that in between my legs. Because see, I'm gonna close my guard even with his leg.
But he's stopping the. This is awkward.
Because I guess I'm holding his arm. That's why he felt he had me too close.
But still, if it's a leg in, but you're able to close your guard around. Is you okay with that?
I do that whenever I sweep people from that position. I love
What's the sweep?
I just pushed.
Okay.
It's just a
Like
play.
to your left. Okay. Because he has no. Oh, it's almost like you're basically around his back a little bit. Okay.
I was so
He
many.
knew that, like I said, a lot of people with that sweep. So he kept leaning to his left, to my right.
Yeah.
So I want to push him to my left. So you see him leaning
I
to
don't
my
see
right.
South being more.
What's the right hand for him to like roll or something?
No, I mean he's stuck. He's not really. He's stuck there. But once it hit there, he kept.
Yo, dog.
See that he's leaning.
This shit is
Like
so
too afraid of my attack
cool.
because he should. Yeah, you should bring the fight to me. So when I felt him, I knew he's too worried about attacks now.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He can't.
Yeah,
He's to the center. He has no.
he's not engaging at that time. He's 100% just defending. So I felt like he doesn't want to engage.
Oh,
And he's looking. I knew at that point he wants my foot because our foot's fine. I had the exact same position. I wasn't holding his arm, and he went to my foot, which he did. Hold. Yeah. So I knew he was looking at my foot.
Which foot? Sorry. Left. Right. That's
So
how
I'm
you.
holding his arm. I'm holding his arm.
And now you contract.
So the moment that I came up, now I'm holding his arm so he can knock. So I'm holding his left arm so he can up, post the hand before they come on.
And he's holding your leg, trying to get you. Basically, to prevent you from attacking.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. When he rolls.
Yeah, he tried to get me off balance. So see now I'm switching. I switched the grip of his arm so I can switch my left arm.
Can I ask you a question? Was there a chance he sweeps you here?
I mean, there's always a chance, but but see, my left arm is free.
Oh, see. Why was
So,
your
Bill Handel,
using it?
you went from Marjorie, who
Okay.
is sometimes in my life, I thought this bitch
Now you will see
to
Okay.
like,
what I do.
like
His
no offense, but dog,
because
that ain't no
he's
that ain't no
in a move that he
Marjorie.
completely opened himself up,
Though
like
she
I'm
looks better
left arm. So
there.
by holding him arm, that prevents him
But,
from defending that
dog.
because
Marjorie
his
was
arm is being
beautiful.
crossed. So the arm,
This lady
yeah.
has a
And
haircut that I
I
have.
mean, so you
on.
say that's my guess.
Dog,
You should-
you just missed the hair.
like 110 kilos, 112, something like that,
which is
45.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So
What
he's
were you?
20. Yeah. 220.
I'm swim. Okay.
So, his defense is amazing. He's good, but he's not going to have amazing defense. So by being the big guy that you want to train, you used to get out.
He says real cheap bagels.
You shake them off.
I don't
Because
think
you shake them off, you get off some bad positions. You can, I could see with the first fight, side control, some of the hicks explode up. So, I've seen him doing that a few of his fights. Not in the most technical way, just I'm getting up. And he did it. So he did the same thing, like he tried to stood up when I'm on his back. Then he caught me, he opened up the hook. He will see the next move, his head gonna come up, and he's gonna try to get off the floor.
So basically, come up, shake you off.
Those aren't
Straight away.
Why? Because everybody knows
His arm is
you really get down to brass tacks. Nobody's like, oh, fucking,
And now,
no true Jew
I'm
is
attacking his
fucking,
neck. And
like
he's
no
gonna-
true Scotsman. No true Jews eating
That's
on.
fatal mistake. That's like defense calls.
Just get some fucking lenders. You can call that fucking
Defense
Jew
first.
bagels. Nose
So he's
bagels,
not worried.
not kosher. Garbage. Tray fucking shit. Get me
So
the
he
fuck
was
out of here.
Progression of
Really? No.
That's why I think
Just let me fucking go live.
And then when I
This is the worst fucking stream of all time. No one cares. I got banned. They still haven't unbanned me. Some asshole, some fucking 19-year-old trick fucking banned me. Why? Because they suck some dick. That's why. Probably in some manga group. And fucking likes to draw, which is fine. But it's like, dog. And I'm sure he plays every fucking game out there, but he's never fucking. He doesn't know what to do on 4th and 2. You fucking go for it. That's what you do.
he could take me down.
Really, dog? If you're not going for it on 4th and 2, go fuck yourself. Head coach is a pussy. We all know it. This is the worst.
No, he's like,
This is the worst. You always go for it on 4th and 2.
standing up.
I always go for it on 4th down. 4th and 35. Even, bitch.
On the way up.
Why?
Because
They give you 4 fucking downs for a reason.
You're high enough on him where the weight just probably that's it just felt
Yeah.
have
I mean, you're already joking. What? There's no time to lose.
look at that. Yeah. So you're not like worried I'm gonna get taken off. Okay, you got your right hand.
This is the absolute worst dog shittiness.
And your right hand is opening. Right hand is moving off.
To that Lindsay lady.
You're holding the sleeve.
Lady,
The sleeve that
you could be better looking if you had more hair. But literally, you and I have the same haircut.
Do you let
There isn't anything sexy about that to me.
No, I did that. But first, I want to try to make it work. I can then I can establish control before I let you at it. So I kept holding that a bit longer. And then when I feel it, I have a control of the back, then I let
Do you? Okay, so you have like a plate as well.
Did you think Lindsay was going to be hotter?
you.
Oh, fuck yeah. I thought she
You're
was
like
going to do
holding
some
it there,
smoke show.
and you're thinking,
That-
okay, at some point,
That?
All I want is to
You had Marjorie,
then I know
who I just found to be absolutely.
because it is right. I need to be honest.
She was
and you
my
might
favorite.
which I show over the.
That's just
Really?
not right. Okay. And
It's
it's
not right.
it both. It's not right.
Yeah, she's beautiful.
I mean, top touches on your chin. No, just pressure.
How,
You hurt.
I don't know. Could be arguing. I love this arguing with
Really?
It's great.
I mean,
Okay.
yeah, I think she's,
Like clock
she's
show.
really hot.
It was always interesting because in judo it's the face, and so it was kind of liberating for me to be allowed to have like here on the face. No, it's just liberating. No, that you don't have to worry about. Like, of course, it's more effective to go to the gym, but I'm surprised surprised just because the amount of pressure.
He's divorced.
You can take it.
It says divorce.
It feels like
It doesn't feel comfortable. I mean, sometimes when you mouth, you could feel mouth, but it's bleeding. It's horrible.
no, but you feel it. That's not the feeling. The feeling, it might not be a joke, but the feeling like it's a pressure that everything's just closing in.
Like there's a thing, like you're not going to sleep. So it's just pressure.
Yes.
So pressure is uncomfortable, but it's not going to break your face, and it's not going to put you to sleep. If I don't get the magnet to look for the kill, I'm holding the his collar. My wrist is almost under. It's I'm trying to kind of dig it. If I can't dig
This
it,
guy has the
then I will
shittiest
go
background.
first. I need to dig in.
I dig in first, just but you can do all that. Yeah.
I did.
So you can tighten it out.
No, I need to stack them on both.
But you're like digging in
I'm digging it under the
under it.
under now I need to
But that going deeper requires a second hand.
do this. Do this.
But that requires you let it go with the other hand.
Yeah, I have to like look at you. Yeah,
Okay. Well, that's all.
because I'm already like the first
Oh, you mean he was mocking bigotry? Dog, you were just being a
need,
racist, you
hand
fuck.
in the second bottom.
blood and he's up.
That's the control turn versus the tight control.
He does. He helped the collar and person from out.
Why hasn't anything happened recently? I think people
Were
stop.
you feeling pretty good about this position?
Yes. I just felt getting tired because he was super tight to the beginning. It wasn't like so. We're still. I mean, I knew it was like very close to the end. I still need to just. He's still got race. Maybe he's.
Is it possible for his hands to fall?
This is the worst.
But I'm closing the gap.
I can't stand him. He sucks.
Well,
Somebody else has to think he sucks.
Relief. Like, awesome. Amazing.
Somebody on Reddit asked him about the crossword he used to sweep, followed the genius grip switch when Buchecha was.
Well, I appreciate you. He
I
sucks. Tired and dull.
Oh, that's good. Okay. What's the genius behind that, or was that just? Do you like that kind of grip?
Yeah, because I always like postcard, and no one wants to be in anyone's postcard by hoping God step to pass. So everybody try to close the God in the middle. Like if you're not standing the floor on the ground and the open God, if you're close to me, you need that. So it is a must. That's when I started developing the attack. I mentioned I have no legs to close my legs with that, and then I just developed that sweep.
When did you start?
I don't remember when, but I'm saying all that.
Okay, so your answer to that is not to figure out how to prevent that from the knee in. Is there an answer to that? But good guys
You can't remove the leg out. It's not possible.
well, maybe off balance.
No. I mean, it's hard. If you feel
Welcome. How you living, pimp?
Right.
We got Ghost in the house. What up?
yeah.
How are you? Hello. How's your day going? I hope you're having a good day. We're watching Lex Friedman. It's a podcast. If you'd like to talk, let me know. If you just want to chill, that's cool too. If you'd like to know all about me, I can tell you all about myself. Whatever you want. It's your world. We just live in it. So we're just going to chill in the meantime. Glad you're here.
Because
I'm going to send you a friend request. Feel free to accept it if you want. Welcome. How are you? What up, Nikash? Hope you're having a wonderful day.
Since Enzo was there, what did he tell you before?
I think just motivate you. I think that hands would motivate that fantastic to motivate me. Like before.
Hello. Hey, I can hear you. What's going on? How's your day going, Nikash? How are you? Excellent. I hope you're having a good day. I'm Rabbi Rothschild. Pleasure to meet you. Yeah. Are you 18 years old? Okay, then you have to go. I'm sorry. You got to take care. Bye, Nikash. Shout out to Nikash, everybody. Bye, bye, Nikash. Nikash, you got to go. Take care. All right, Ghost. We're gonna be watching the podcast.
The constant.
Enjoy.
His energy being around you. I think that's is the great thing. Honor is the motivation.
What up?
What did you learn about jiu-jitsu? We got to hang out with you.
What's good in your neck of the woods? It's legendary Koosh. Perfect, man. We're watching podcasts. You know what podcasts are? Of course you do. Absolutely. And we have Brutal Smug in here. How you living, pimp? I hope you're having a good day. We're just watching Lex Friedman with perhaps the greatest jiu-jitsu fighter of all time. Word, dog. But this person here, I've told them they have to be 18 to be in. Hold on. Yeah, I know, because you have to be 18 years old to. I've got to kick you out. Sorry, you can't be in here. I don't have to do anything like that. Yo, dog, just leave. Word, dog. Word, dog. Nikash, you gotta go, my friend. I am. I unblocked you so that I can ban you. Take care, my friend. Talk to me when you're 21. All right, there we go. Hey, we have our friend. Our friend is here. We're just watching podcasts. Glad everybody's here. We've got a really great turnout for a Tuesday morning at 7:07 a.m. Welcome, welcome.
Historic coaches and jiu-jitsu competitors, but also personalities in the martial arts world, in the world in general. There's very few like him.
Hans is a fantastic person. It's like, what I've learned most from him is like, you can take any challenge. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, sure. What would you like to say? What's going on? Sure. Okay, ask whatever you'd like. Affirmatia. They asked where you from. Yes. I can't see it either. Oh, now I can. Now, yeah, you can see what's going on. She's translating for you. Yeah, what's going on, Pim? Oh, fuck yeah. I can tell you. I can tell you all the best ways to do them. I've been doing them for almost 20 years. Yeah. They're pretty. Sure. I've microdosed. I've macrodosed. I've done a moderate amount. I've done it all. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, LSD is amazing. I think it's one of the best feelings you can have. The body buzz is incredible. The visuals are amazing. It's cheap as fuck. It's very, very inexpensive. In comparison, like, think about it. If you wanted to have like a 12-hour, if you want to get high for 12 hours, it's more expensive to smoke a ton of weed than it is just a couple of LSD tabs. It's just very inexpensive for a lot of fun. Just because he was fucking high on LSD. I love it, man. I bet it was quite a sensation with all the grass on his feet. Oh, sure. Wow. How was Walmart? No, how was it? Did you buy more than you usually would? There you go. So all in all, how long did the trip last? How many hours? Wow. Okay. That can happen, certainly. That's a good trip, man. Yeah, which is great.
Word, dog. That's the right kind of mentality. That got clean that bitch up. You're good, big dog. Um, that's a really popular game.
you have to be ready, and with that war spirit that he has, he always took any challenge, ready or not ready.
Was it you that said it, or he said it where not until you go in, to do something difficult do you discover the strength you have. So, like, but if you really think about it, you might think that you're not good enough, you don't have the strength to take on something difficult.
I really think we are measured not when we're on the strongest, but when we are on the weakest. That's when we truly measure ourselves or character, who we are, not when we're in a position of power, or in a position of weakness.
Have you surprised yourself, like how damn good you are? Like, is this really how good I am in this situation? Where in retrospect you might think, how the hell was I able to accomplish this?
Not how good I am, because otherwise I wouldn't be there. So, being there in the first place, it's already not a great thing. But I say, every single time I found myself there, I was super proud that I've never cried. Like, I've never gave up, ever, any second, any fight, never.
Never been broken in public.
Never. Even, it's not about winning or losing, it's about you giving up. I've never doubted myself. I always fought to the very end, always. That I'm most proud of. Because there was moments, it's in a terrible position, mainly like there was moments that I was super tired or like exhausted tired when it was easy to give up, like I had nothing more to give. But I took energy out of my soul, I have to say, because when my body had to feel my spirit, my soul, all that.
Is that in part just not allowing yourself to have to ever quit?
Yeah.
I have one other thing I regret. I remember like a blue belt match. I remember, I'm not gonna say who it was against, but I remember just being extremely exhausted and just constantly fighting a guy who was really good mount, really good guard passing, and I just remember him passing my guard. Eventually, it was just like a finals of one of the IPPJF tournaments, and then right away going to mount and just, I don't know, the level of frustration. I mean, I quit at that point. So I remember that stuff. Like it's not about winning or losing. But I just remember I was like teary-eyed, frustrated, and then I knew there was a lot of fights to the left in there somewhere, and I quit. I regret that to this day. Because I think the reason I regret that is because it gave me an option to not quit in every other aspect of life. That this is an option.
Yeah, it is.
It sucks.
Yeah, it teaches us, it makes us stronger.
It's like you
it
said.
made you stronger.
Yeah, it makes you stronger that you did that, to learn that, don't do that again. But still, like you said, just going to sleep and training, I do think it made me weaker. It did make me weaker the rest of my life too. I've quit a few times in my life on small things, and you realize, okay, it's not that big of a deal. Like, who cares? But that what you learn over time is that voice always comes there. Like, obviously, maybe it does for you too, even at the highest level. I'm like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, it's okay to quit here. Like, it makes sense. Everybody would understand. In some sense, like, you're, many people would say you're past your prime in this match with the progression. Like, it makes sense. You've been focusing on MMA. It makes sense. Makes sense to lose. Yeah, I don't know. That's a weird voice, and in some sense, it's that voice and the voice that says, like, "Why are you doing this? Like, this is silly. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Just stop. Just stop. Just stop." And shutting that voice down and never allowing yourself to quit. That's a really cool thing. Like, everybody has to know. Everybody that's successful. Yeah, down to the even engineers, CEOs, Elon Musk, just never quitting. Like when everybody around you says quit, never quit. It's weird. I don't know what that is. It might be genetic. It might be like using the stubbornness to just never allow yourself to develop that. You're basically developing a callousness to that voice that trying to tell you to quit. You never quit, huh? What would you attribute that to?
It's like how much you want to get to the destination you chose. Like, it's how badly you want to get there. If you quit, you're never going to get there.
And you always want it. Is there something you remember from that match? Some things that happened before and after that stand out to you? Just since in Rio.
Yeah, there was an interview, like prior to the fight. There was a big fight. We were doing like media every day before we made, me and him were meeting for media. And like 5 days before, 5 days before, I'm quite chatty. The closer we get to the fight, the more focus I get, the less I start joke around playing, with people. But I remember, I think it was maybe 3 or 4 days before, we were doing this school together. And my cousin Kira was there, she was having an interview with us. And I remember it was like what we were talking about, that I just remember we were talking about the fight, of course, and then it was interesting, we were standing beside each other. And I'm like, and then suddenly I jump in the button by the neck. I say, I'm going to tap you by the neck. And then you're like, very shy. And then I let go and say, no, I'm going to tap you by the arm. And I could feel he was like, he wasn't confident. With me, there was, me saying that I'm going to tap him out. It was like, I was so relaxed, joking about it, but I'm joking that I'm going to tap him out in the fight that we're going to have in 4 days' time. And yeah, I felt it was like not comfortable at all.
Do you think you got in his head a little bit? It gave you a little bit of confidence?
Yeah.
You've said that jiu-jitsu is a reflection of your personality. So both your jiu-jitsu and your personality, there's a calmness. What is that? Why are you so calm? Is there like an ocean underneath that's boiling? Is this developed or is this your personality? Are you basically leveraging who you are already to develop a game around the jiu-jitsu, or did the jiu-jitsu make you calm?
I think both. I was always very calm since I was a kid. Since very young. I was never very, fiery person. So that is the reflection, you reflected on my jiu-jitsu in my life, on my fights, the way I fight. So it's a direct influence of my personality. And I think it's also, you develop, the more you practice, the more you fight. It's like, you don't want to get nervous about that adrenaline. So you just learn how to shut that off from your mind. So the less I thought about it, it's like how many times I thought, let's say the week before the fight, that's when we start more really concerned about it. Because now you get very far away. It's not to think of the tournament, you get a bit nervous, but it goes away quick. But the fight, the week before, I mean, contact. And every time you think, it comes in, the heart accelerates, it doesn't, it makes it's like, why am I feeling what did you do today? So you shut that thought out of your mind because you don't want to feel that adrenaline, your heart accelerating, it's not going to add you anything. So it's, it's the practice also that I think it helped me to shut that off my mind.
Does that help you regularly?
Yeah, of course. With somebody when you go into any situation that might be stressful, like important meeting, super, whatever it is, it's like how much would you worry about that? Or worry is not going to help you anywhere. It's the opposite. It's going to make you more nervous, your heart will accelerate, your ability to think clearly is going to be damaged by that. So it's like the more calm and more relaxed you are, the better you can sleep.
You don't get angry?
Yeah.
Like in traffic? Do you ever get like not calm, just like you're screaming?
Not enough pain. No.
It's just angry. What does angry look like? Is it still calm?
Yeah, like it's the seconds of complaining and then it goes away.
Have you ever like thrown a cell phone in the wall or something like that?
No, I never did that. But that's it's like it's if I would have done that, I would not be able to control my emotions prior to fight.
letting yourself lose.
Losing control that will reflect all the time.
Do you think it has in part made you more emotionally closed off to the world? Like it's harder for you to be vulnerable to others.
Probably. Yeah, I heard that a few times. I'm emotionally closed. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think that it might.
Yeah. Have you ever cried at a movie?
Yeah. So not for many years before that, maybe I'm getting older.
Do you remember the movie?
Something. I mean, this. No, I have to know something. I would say that the last few years I've been crying more than before for some reason. I don't know why. Like silly movies, like nothing, something shit to my head.
Yeah. Well, I already just having met you and interacted with you, I can see that you're kind of opening your heart and mind to the world. You could see like here's this historically great athlete. Now like the wars have been fought and you're now like waking up to the world. It's cool to see.
Probably I'm bringing my car down now. I don't have to get it up.
You can even do some podcasts. You said you watched some movies beforehand sometimes. You mentioned Braveheart. What were you doing? Did you watch something beforehand, like the day before?
It was like, I think Braveheart and Gladiator. I mean, there's a few others that I've always watched the day before. Because the day before is enough. Yeah, I just want to be at home in bed watching TV, like saving, the energy. Stretching by myself is like I just want to save energy. I don't waste my energy going out, going around. So, those are the movies that I always like to watch. And I try to give some, higher excitement, like, getting ready to watch tomorrow. So I'm like, let me watch some movies that like brought that, some of that warrior spirit into me.
Yeah, what is that about Supernature? Braveheart I love even more. Should you put your life on the line for a thing that matters or run away just so you can live? It's like running, you may live, but like years from now, when you look back at this moment, would you trade all the days just to come back to this moment? You can take our lives, but you can't take our freedom. I mean, man, what is that about human nature? Is there some aspect of like the glory you were able to achieve being more important than anything else? There's some aspect of that's greatness,
Yeah, I never received God. So it just came, it came with it. But that was never my goal. I never cared for.
Well, were you able to experience like I'm at the height of this thing? Whatever humanity is able to achieve at various things, holy shit, I'm flying.
I felt like nothing happened. No one can touch me. I can destroy people.
Yeah. Prolonged periods of time or just momentarily?
I always knew, from this before I got my black belt, but like I can be great because my cook, I used to train with the best in the world. I used to for many years, and I used to see my progression with and everybody else. So I knew I was getting somewhere. I know I could be the best, and that was always my goal since very very young. And I always believed that I could be, and then over the years, that kept telling me over and over again because I'm getting better and better faster than everybody else. So if I just need to carry on with what I'm doing.
But I think you said that you wanted to, maybe you thought you'd be the greatest of all time, like at the very beginning, like when you sucked.
Yeah, not the greatest of all time. And I never really thought about that. But I thought I could be the best when I sucked.
Okay, so what is that? What is that? That self-belief. Is there a component to that self-belief?
Used to say it because that was a decision. Like, why did I believe I could be? I can't tell you that because I don't.
When you think you decided,
I decided
decided to be. And I believe that I think there was like a day somewhere when you were young, you're like, oh, you're sitting at home eating Cheetos. I don't think it was that a day like a moment because for many years I wasn't really trained much as a child. I'm gonna be able to train and install, gonna be able to never get away from it much. But until like from 10 to 14, I better trained. I used to. There was no British school near where I lived, and I was introduced to that Jewish school, high school. So finally, I got to use tournament. I lost 5 seconds. That's right. The guy who told me I think it's good. So when I was 14, I went to the south of Brazil to see my uncle Hillian to spend such summer holidays. I was there for like 4 weeks, I think. And when I got there, my cousin Hollis was living with him. Hollis, like, bigger than me. He was, I think, he's 4 years older. So I was 14, he was already 18, 17, 18. We're probably our competitor. And I think that was the first time in my life that I felt what it meant to be a Gracie in terms of having a school, teaching, training, living that, this lifestyle, what a Gracie meant to be. And I've loved it. I was out of shape. My uncle was like, incentivizing me to lose weight, to train. But you're not training, why? He was like, you're out of shape. So I used to run every day. I was eating super well. I thought, I started when I started training. When I got back to Rio, I was super motivated to follow up, carry on. And he invited me to go back there to live with him. But I couldn't, it was too soon to change schools. And my mom said, no, but maybe next year it's going to go. You can't. So I kept that in my mind. Next year, I moved to the south to live with him. I was 15. And it was him, my uncle Peter, and my uncle Crowley. They both used to live very close to each other. We used to have the schools close to each other. So I was with both. And I stayed there for almost a year. I was the youngest in the academy. There was some, blue, purple bells, normal guys, but they were competing, training ahead of me. And I just joined the group of training. I didn't compete while I was there. There was no competition back then. And I wasn't really ready, but it's not about competing, it's more about the training. And I started training every day, started improving. And a year after that, when I came back to Rio, I was already on a mission. I was like, I love this. I'm just carrying on training every day with my uncle Carlos Gracie Jr., Gracie Bar. And when I got there, I was training a little bit there before, but 15. But when I got there, there was that was one of the most competitors, one of the biggest at the time. There were so many high-level world champions, competitors in every single belt. And so I kind of joined in with that. And I carry on. I don't remember when, but I remember, looking and saying, I'm going to be the best in the world. But I was at the bottom of the stairs. No one really believed. I didn't shout, to disguise, but, I told a few people, I'm like, I'm going to be the best. And that's, I think, I was just losing, but I've never, ever doubt. I've never, from that, I'll say.
Did anyone believe you? You said you were great. What? Didn't matter?
Didn't matter.
Even people that love you.
Everybody, not my dad, not me, no one thought. No one in my family thought I was going to be here today. Nobody. Because I just started late. I've never had any stars that people, that kid's going to be really good. I was a chubby kid that didn't barely train. I mean, if people used to look at me, just another Gracie. There's, one more.
What do you learn from that? You think most people lose that self-belief? They quit when everyone around them is believe?
Yeah. I think if those that need approval, that
That's the issue.
I never need approval from anyone. I don't care. You believe me or not, it's not my problem.
It's tough. It's tough. I don't need approval, but you're surrounded by people older, wiser, better than you, and they're kind of directly or indirectly saying you stop being silly?
No one ever told me that because that was not something that I used to say all the time. I maybe say it just very, very few times.
Maybe that's the secret.
Of course, I mean, if you start shouting, then you just speak silly. Then it's not what you really want. Then you're saying that for another reason. If you say it over and over again, because you shouldn't. I mean, why?
Well, to push back, one of the reasons you might want to say it is to find the right people that believe in you.
Yeah, but no, if you say it over and over again, then you're just bragging.
Sure.
Because one thing is to say it, but the other one is to do it. So it's, you say that once or very few times, but now you have to do it. Saying is not helping getting there.
Was there sacrifices you had to make?
Everything. That was my priority in life. Everything was secondary.
Like social life, career paths,
Everything.
And as for 14, 15, to get better and better and better and better, it was just becoming sharper to focus on this thing.
Yeah, it's just over and over again. It's just training. And I mean, how many times I lost, I had no clue.
So on the mat, you were
getting smashed by everybody. People my age, I was chubby, I was physically weak. I mean, I'm tall, but physically, I'm not physically strong. I'm normally strong for my size, but physically, if you want to measure strength, I'm weak. Because, we can measure strength lifting weight. I'm weak. I don't lift. I lift weight same as people much harder than me. Everybody knows my weight has heavier weight.
And the people that train with you often talk about how
I'm super strong. Because I generate a lot of, I can create. I put myself in the right angle. So then I can be strong. I'm not strong. And the only person who I listen to saying that is Computer, one guy that I fought, Rodrigo Medeiros. I fought him a few times. And he's the only one that I heard saying about me that like, no, George is not strong. He's not. He's technical and he can create strength, but he's not strong.
you went that as healthy.
Yeah, I think so. No, I think he was honest because I think he's the only one who could see that. So I think that's a compliment.
Like he's technically good. So you had incredible magic. Yeah. Is there insight you have about how you went from a person who was not very good, but had a dream, confident dream, a vision, to somebody that was actually good? Was there something to the practice sessions? Were you getting reps on specific techniques?
I've never done anything special because I'm in a gym training equally with everybody else, but I've never did anything on the side different than anybody else. But I was in the school training exactly the same way as everybody else.
In terms of schedule, yes, but what was, can you reverse engineer what was going through your mind? Because there's so many different ways to actually mentally approach these things.
I'm gonna try to.
Okay, so it's, in some part it's competitive.
Yeah.
Like at the core of it is I want to be better than these particular people.
You're gonna keep beating me and keep coming back at you.
And to do that, I have to solve problems. I have to figure out how to do stuff.
Yeah. You catch me once, I'm gonna keep on coming, trying to not get caught.
At which point did you develop a game that was basically the famous white belt game of the very basics, the very fundamentals of jiu-jitsu? Like saying, I'm going to beat you.
Never. There was never a conscious decision to try to to have a basic jiu-jitsu first. I think there's a big misconception there.
Okay, what's the misconception?
My jiu-jitsu is not
Mr.
basic.
Magic Race. It's not. You're right.
It's not basic. It's not old school. I think people they just don't see that. It's extremely complex in a way that people they cannot copy. I teach people. I can teach you the cross-collar truth. But the one thing that people they don't realize is not the move. Is you need to practice the move until you learn. is the practice over and over again. Like it took me years. When I say years, I'm like years after with the cross collection, effectively years after I got my black belt. So that's something that you learn first day, first week. So I can teach you. It makes no difference. You know the theory, but until you applied it, and it will help you, of course. The more you do not, the more tools you have to practice, but it's still very complex because it's not about the move itself. It's about how can you control the movement of the other person who's resisting, blocking, picking up with his body you do, and he's going to help point of moves to block you every single move you do step on the way. It's a progression of move from beginning to end. So that's like it's a progression of move. And there's not one way to get that. There's many ways because how many ways can you block? You can put your arm every single ankle, have both arms you can bridge. So it's dealing with all that. That's the complexity of the position. But that goes for everything. Like every single move, my strong move, I would say, it took me years developing. Years. So it's that's basic. So we'll try to do it. What the other person is different. That's the key because most of the things that I do, I've been doing this for years. And they know that I'm going to do it. I can still get it most of the time. That's the hard. It's when they know what's coming.
And you said that the way you're able to do that, you just have to do it right.
Yeah.
What do you learn by doing all the steps along the way? And just for people who don't know, cross-collar choke from the mouth. So you just start in an initial place. There's people on their feet. Either you get to the ground somehow, and then there's the person on top and on bottom, and then there's a guard with the two people. You get past the guard. As you get past the guard and you into side control and so on, you get more and more and more dominant positions. And so mount is considered to be one of those dominant positions. It's right here. Past their legs, sitting on top of their stomach, putting pressure on the cross-collar choke is using their jacket to
So I have the collars. I put my both hands on the collars, and when I squeeze, you press your neck, so it goes to the vein, you go to sleep. So it's you choke people with your hands in the wrist. You put them, you grab the collars, you get the wrist around people's neck, you sleep.
Yeah, the discovery of that is fascinating. I mean, it's interesting. It's like you can imagine there's all kinds of ways to choke a human being. What animals do with their mouth, right? They put their jaws on them. And I think you kind of discover this methodology of the right kind of positioning, and then it becomes an art form. Like, why this? Why not this, right? Or why not this? Or something. Like, to figure all that out.
We practice.
Over time, you figure out what to or not. And then further details and subtleties start to emerge. Anyway, on that process of being able to beat some of the best people in the world, and the thing they know is coming. What's the difference between the white belt doing that and Padre Gracie doing that? It's the thing that's so hard to explain. What do you think you're picking up? Is it some tiny, tiny details of muscle movements?
It is. It's many tiny details because it's the whole movement itself. It's the perception from beginning to end. Like every step of the movement, it's important and precise. So it's you miss one detail on the way, it collapses. So when you with the black belt has no control over the whole movement. He's thinking beginning and end. So he goes straight to your neck, regardless. He cannot read the other person. If it's time to let go, if it's time to go for a neck, should I be pushing here before I get my hand in? Is this the right time to go deep, or should I deal with this first before the second hand?
That's at the beginning. So it's at the white belt.
Yeah.
At the very beginning of the journey.
Yeah. The white belt, you just think, finish.
And then as you progress, you see that there's this giant tree of possibilities that you're almost feeling your way down. I mean, you should be able to teach. Do you even know what you're doing?
By the details.
But it's hard to convert into words, probably.
No,
It's possible.
then you don't know what you're doing.
So what are some most important details that you could say? Maybe positioning of the hand, the gripping. Is it the positioning of your body, the